Chapter 77. In the basement of the castle, Dean and the others rested after the doctors left. They hadn't had a good rest in the 10 days outside the giant wall. At the moment, they were in a cage. Everyone was completely relaxed and soon snored loudly. Dean didn't fall asleep immediately, but gently stroked the magic marks on his chest. The touch was extremely clear. He couldn't tell whether it was from his fingertips or from the magic marks. He felt as if his heart was being touched by his fingers. The cool feeling made his hair stand up. His nerves were instinctively tense. He could feel his heart beating faster when he exerted a little force. There was a bit of tightness in his chest. This magic mark. If it is destroyed, then my life will be greatly threatened. I might even die. Dean silently thought. He didn't expect that his life would be linked to the magic marks. To be precise, it was linked to the bloodworm inside the magic marks. He was lying on the bed, turning left and right, but he didn't fall asleep. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of the holy scripture of light on the table. He picked it up and gently opened it. He saw the flying characters written with goose feather. The first sentence made him squint his eyes. Light is the truth. Plants can grow because there is light in the world. Because there is light, we can see. Light can give people life. The creator of the light, the God of light, will protect all loyal to him. The opening of the scripture was the core of the scripture. The latter was a story that was beneficial to the light. To be precise, it was a phenomenon that everyone knew. It was because everyone knew that it couldn't be refuted, because the role of the light was too big. The scripture was basically right. Dean even felt that the scripture wasn't complete enough. The role of light. If there was no light, then there would be no life on earth. This point alone was better than tens of thousands of examples. However, Dean didn't believe in the God of light. The role of light couldn't be ignored, but what did it have to do with the Holy Church? Dean flipped through the book and roughly understood how to recruit believers. First of all, he would propose some natural phenomena that everyone knew about and incorporate them into his teachings. Then, he would list them out one by one. After reading them, most people would have a feeling of sudden enlightenment. Combined with what they had seen in life, they would immediately be convinced. Once he was convinced, he could add his own ideas into it, mix these ideas together, and instill them into the minds of others. If one's personality was not sound enough and his worldview was not firm enough, it would be difficult for him to distinguish the mixed ideas, and as a result, he would believe everything and become blind. Once they were blinded, they would become devout believers who would believe whatever they were told. What is mentioned above is only the appearance brought about by some light. There is no scientific basis to explain it. Just like what my father always said, the ancients were intelligent, but they lacked tools. They could only know how, but not why. People today are the same. Dean secretly thought. After perfecting the tool and entering the microscopic level, we can explain the origin of light from the root, and even let people see the form of light. Father often said that all foolish beliefs are due to the backwardness of science and technology, which cannot be explained. Dean believed his father's words and became more determined to become an alchemist. The 3 days of cleansing quickly passed. 2 doctors would come over every day for routine checks to observe the physical changes of Dean and others. In fact, it was just a formality. They had seen too many such checks. Basically, the infected people would soon show symptoms. Only those who were extremely tenacious would carefully hide the scars and endure until the last moment of the 3rd day. But such cases were very rare. Dean and others changed into new black soft armors. The size of the armors was also measured according to their damaged soft armors. It was very fitting. Everyone, please. A guard of light came over and showed the way. Dean and others didn't see the knight with long black hair. They followed the guard of light and left the castle. As they came to the gate, they heard a voice. "Mr. Dean, may I ask who is Mr. Dean?" Dean was surprised to see a middle-aged gentleman wearing a black top hat and a cane in his hand. He looked up at Dean and the others. Scott, who was walking on the side, smiled and pointed at Dean. "This is him." The middle-aged gentleman was surprised. He didn't expect that he would wait here to deliver a letter to a big boy, but he didn't dare to neglect. He quickly stepped forward and took out a letter. Mr. Dean, this is a letter for you." Dean glanced at the stamp and address. It was the stamp of the Melon Consortium and the address of the scavenger headquarters. He understood that the two doctors had reported about the magic marks. Dean nodded and thanked them. He put away the letter and gently opened it. The content was very simple. "Find me at the top office of the headquarters." Top office? Dean naturally understood what the top office meant. It was where the scavenger's top secret was dealt with. In short, Peter and other scavengers were trained or held meetings on the top floor of the headquarters. "It's about the nomination of you as a hunter. The headquarters is really fast." Scott laughed. "Congratulations, ah? You have been a scavenger, and now you are a hunter. Maybe in the future we will meet again in the wilderness." Mia, who was next to him, was stunned. What's the situation? Hunter? Dean?" Scott laughed. "You don't know yet, but Dean has born magic marks. He is a veritable hunter." Mia stared at Dean in a daze. Dean smiled and looked at Scott. "Thank you for your guidance in scavenging outside the giant wall. It's a piece of cake." Scott smiled. He was very happy as he knew that Dean had remembered his favor. He immediately said, "Mia and I will go first. After a few days the price of materials has been evaluated. We will meet again at the headquarters." Dean was surprised. The price of materials hasn't been evaluated yet, but thinking about those things, all of them were modern items from outside the giant wall. Many of them were things that people inside the giant wall hadn't seen before. It would take time to evaluate the price. Mason and the other two said goodbye to Dean after watching Scott and Mia leave. They sat in the exclusive carriage of the consortium and left. The other three consortium scavengers and the newcomer boy politely bid farewell to Dean. They also picked a consortium carriage and left the place. Chapter 78. Melon Consortium, Scavenger Headquarters. The carriage stopped in front of the door. Dean got off the carriage and looked up at the huge sleeping building. He walked up the stairs step by step and came to the entrance hall. He saw that it was very empty inside. There were several consortium scavengers in front of the announcement board in front of the hall to browse the information. The bulletin board was dedicated to announcing the information that the scavengers needed. It was mainly about the changes in the various areas under the jurisdiction of the Melon Consortium or the changes in the neighboring areas. When Dean entered the door, he could see the information on the bulletin board. One of them was actually the message of Area Number 8. The general meaning was that Area Number 8 was temporarily blocked. Scavengers should not enter. Duddy knew that in addition to them occasionally being assigned by the consortium to scavenge in a specific area, scavengers were free to go to any area under the jurisdiction of the Melon Consortium. There were no restrictions. Therefore, most of the scavengers would come to understand the latest changes in each area before going on mission. It was to avoid encountering dangers like the one they were facing this time. After all, although these areas have been cleaned, but how could the undead and monsters pay attention to the lines drawn by people? They would often break into some areas that had already been scavenged, just like the one Dean met. After a glance, Dean went upstairs along the corridor inside the hall. "Hey, Dean." Suddenly a voice came. Dean looked over and saw Peter coming out of the office with a cup of hot coffee. He smiled and said, "Mr. Peter, the materials you picked up haven't been estimated yet. What are you doing here?" Peter asked in a strange tone. Dean also felt strange. Hadn't he heard about his own things? Suddenly, he thought about it. Hunters' affairs seemed to be confidential. Ordinary scavengers could only rely on their qualifications like Scott to hear some gossip. But Dean didn't expect that Peter wouldn't get the news. He smiled and euphemistically avoided the topic. "It seems that there is something the higher-ups want me to do." Peter froze for a moment. And suddenly thought of something. He frowned and said to himself, "It shouldn't be. Even if they suspect, they won't suspect you newcomers." Peter looked at Dudian's puzzled eyes and hesitated for a moment. He approached Dudian and whispered, "I guess they are looking for you about the undeads in the 8th area. I have heard about it. A few days ago, there was news from the Hunters' headquarters that they will thoroughly investigate the scavengers who entered the 8th area. However, there is no reason for them to suspect you newcomers. You don't have to worry too much, as long as you pay attention to your words." Dean couldn't help but be startled. His whole body was slightly erect. It was as if he had encountered an instinctive danger. But soon he found that he was overreacting. His face quickly returned to normal. I was wondering. Mr. Peter, thank you for reminding me. Peter smiled. I'm looking at you. Work hard. Then he left with the hot coffee. Dean looked at Peter's back and slowly turned back. The smile on his face had disappeared. His eyes slightly narrowed. He thought that the Hunter headquarters would investigate Area Number 8 and look for traces from a scene. He didn't expect that the scope of thorough investigation would be expanded to the scavengers. Although he wasn't afraid. But such a big action was enough to show that the Hunter headquarters was very serious about this matter. His mind quickly recalled the traces that he had dealt with. He suddenly thought of something. This magic mark was the ability of every hunter. So would other hunters have any special abilities like his keen sense of smell? Thinking of this, his fingers slightly clenched. His heart made up his mind. Even if the higher-ups investigated, he wouldn't admit it. He looked at the steps in front of him. His expression was calm as he walked step by step. The scavenger headquarters had a total of 4 floors. Each floor had guards. These guards were selected from the nobles of the Melon Consortium. Only the nobles had the right to recruit private armed forces. But the quota was limited. This was one of the basic requirements for a consortium to have a foothold. The door opened, and a middle-aged butler opened it. He looked up and down at Dudian and smiled. You are the new member of the consortium, Dudian. Please come in. Dean nodded and entered the room. The dazzling golden light immediately shone on his body, and a faint fragrance wafted from every corner of the room. The floor he was stepping on was extremely soft. It was actually a dark red carpet. He quickly and accurately glanced at everything in the room. All the tables, chairs, sofas, desks, and oil paintings were extremely expensive. A compelling atmosphere of elegance and wealth crowded over him. He sighed deeply in his heart at the luxury. His gaze fell on a huge oil painting of a woman at the top of the room. It was a middle-aged man with a strong physique. He had thick eyebrows and starry eyes. He had a murderous and cold temperament. At the same time, he also had a bit of vicissitudes and laziness. The most eye-catching thing was the side of his chin, near his neck, where there was a finger-long scar. The position of this scar was shocking. It made people think that if it was half a centimeter away, perhaps the carotid artery would have been cut. Little guy, come and sit down. The middle-aged man looked at Dean. There was a little surprise in his eyes as he smiled. Dean saw the gentle attitude of the middle-aged man. He knew that he was not going to inquire about the hunter. His heart was relieved. He went to the sofa opposite to the middle-aged man and sat down. I've seen your resume. The radiation value measured before was only 0. 8, not even 1. The middle-aged man gently opened a book on the table and smiled at Dean. This time you had just come back from outside the giant wall. The radiation value in your body has just broken 1. But the radiation content in your body is high. After a period of time, your body will automatically adjust and adapt. The radiation content should be reduced by 0. 1. In general, the radiation content is less than 1. Little guy, do you know that this is the radiation content of a hunter? Dean nodded slightly. He was not surprised. Chapter 79. Dean was prepared for this question, so he honestly used the previous words, I don't know. After I fainted, I got this. Fainted? Dayton was interested. How did you faint? Dean was calm on the surface, but his mind was spinning fast. If it was before, he would only vaguely say, I don't know. But when he heard Peter's words, he knew that the hunters had investigated the 8th area. Moreover, he understood that the magic marks were not unique to him, but every hunter had some strange ability. Although he had burned the body of the hunter, and the body was eaten by the black behemoth, but he wasn't sure if there were any traces left at the scene that he hadn't noticed and exposed him. Moreover, the death of a hunter and the birth of a hunter were both big events, so it was easy to associate them together. Thinking of this, Dean changed his mind. I saw a hunter fighting with a huge monster, and he was so scared that he fainted. Elder, what was that monster? It was so big. His fingers could not help but clench, and his body slightly trembled, as if he still could not stop the fear in his heart. Dayton looked at Dean's slightly trembling legs under the tea table, and his eyes showed a bit of thinking. This process only paused for a few seconds, and he quickly recovered his eyes. He bowed his head and sketched a line on the book. That monster is called Defiler. It is a monster with a name. Its body has been born with parasitic soulworm. Your magic mark is actually the body of the parasitic soulworm. Defiler? Dean murmured. Only now did he know the name of the monster he killed. But Dayton's last word surprised him. When he was about to ask directly, he suddenly became alert and said in a panic, "Sir, what is the parasitic soulworm you mentioned? It enter my body? Then I am—" Dayton raised his head and said with a smile, "Don't worry. I said that the magic mark was the corpse of the parasitic soulworm. It was already dead when it drilled into your body, but even though it was dead, it was still connected to your body before it died. Its corpse turned into a magic mark, and the location of the magic mark is your fatal spot. It is as important as your head and heart. Remember to be careful in the future, and it is best not to reveal the location of your magic mark." Dean was stunned, but there was a burst of surprise in his heart. He had always been worried that the worm was in his chest, and he didn't know when it would bite him. He didn't expect it to be dead, so the hidden danger was much smaller. At the same time, he also captured a piece of information from Dayton's words. It seemed that everyone's magic mark position was different. His magic mark was on the chest, while the other hunter's magic marks were on other parts of their body. "Little guy, you're very lucky," Dayton said with a smile. "To be able to obtain such an opportunity, Lady Luck is looking after you." Originally, the headquarters intended to look at your performance. If your performance is good, then after 2 years, you will be given an opportunity to study at the Hunter College. Then you'll be able to buy the parasitic soulworm so that you can become a real qualified hunter. I didn't expect that you would accidentally become a hunter in advance. In this way, the headquarters can save the funds to buy the parasitic soulworm. Moreover, your magic mark is the Defiler. You may not know, but this is an extremely rare kind of monster. I believe that when you arrive at the headquarters, the other hunters will be very jealous of you." Dean said, "This is all thanks to the consortium's cultivation. Elder, what is the parasitic soulworm that you said? Do you want to buy it? Don't we have it in our consortium? This is a kind of parasite that feeds on the monster's soul." Dayton didn't mind explaining to Dean. He smiled and said, "Generally, it is a more special and powerful monster. Once this thing enters the human body, it will die. Therefore, the hunters can't give their magic mark to each other. That's why the number of hunters hasn't increased. Because there are too few monsters, it's very difficult to meet them. Although the consortium has the ability to capture the monsters, but there is no way to raise the parasitic soulworm. The only way is to directly raise the monster. But the monster is not allowed to be brought back to the giant wall, so we can only buy it from the Holy Church. They have the God of Light's cradle, which can preserve the living parasitic soulworm. But the price is extremely expensive." Dean was secretly awestruck. No wonder the Holy Church, as a religious organization, could recruit a large number of light guards and knights. Even all the consortiums had to give face to the Holy Church. In addition to the superficial belief, there was a deep penetration of substantial interests. This time I called you in secret. Your identity as a hunter hasn't been made public yet. Even the other senior members of our headquarters don't know about it." Dayton smiled and said, "This is to protect you. I hope you don't spread the news. The headquarters will soon send someone to confirm your identity. After the confirmation, you will be able to go through the identity procedures and become a member of our consortium's hunter team." Dean nodded slightly. In addition to protecting him, the real purpose should be to prevent other consortiums from knowing the news and secretly poaching me. "Oh, there's one more thing." Dayton suddenly remembered and said, "You submitted the 7 soul crystals, commonly known as cold crystals. The price of each one is 1 gold coin. Although your identity hasn't been registered yet, but this is in accordance with the proportion of the hunter's share. If you are a scavenger, you can only get 1 silver coin." Soul crystals? Dean knew the name of the dark blue ball. At the same time, he was secretly speechless. The proportion of the scavenger and the hunter's share was 10 times different. He was a seed target, so he had a 30% share. So, wouldn't the hunter get 300% share? Wouldn't the consortium lose money? Dayton saw Duty in surprise and laughed. Anyway, you are going to the hunter's headquarters. Let me be frank with you. The scavengers will get 50% of the total cost of the consortium's transportation. The remaining 50% will be paid by the individual for the materials identification fee, consortium's transportation fee, and other handling fees and taxes. All consortiums are like this. We're not the only one. Dean was stunned. He couldn't help but secretly sigh. Businessmen's means of making money were really ruthless. Scavengers had to work hard to pick up materials outside the giant wall. They would even encounter life-threatening situations. They had to suffer from radiation. But in the end, they could only get a very small part of the things they brought back. Consortiums only needed to provide channels to the outside of the giant wall and other channels to get a lot of profits. It was simply an empty hand. It seems that the real powerful businessmen are not trading, but robbing. Dean felt that he had gained a lot of knowledge. Chapter 80. It's confidential. Dayton faintly smiled. But it's not a secret among the senior hunters. I can personally reveal one or two things to you. This thing is one of the raw materials of God's blessing. It can enhance physical strength, but if you use it directly, you'll be infected by the resentment of the undead. It's easy to degenerate into undead or other monsters. Dudian was startled. He remembered that when he was branded with the magic mark, he seemed to have absorbed a soul crystal while he was unconscious, but nothing happened. Was it because of the magic marks? Can a hunter use it directly? Dudian asked. Dayton shook his head no. Dudian was stunned. His heart was pounding. Even a hunter couldn't use it? But he could. At least, from the moment he absorbed the cold crystal until now, he had not felt anything strange in his body. If there was really a change, then on the day of cleansing, the two doctors would definitely be able to detect something. After all, they were senior doctors with long experience. Magic marks. Hunters' magic marks were different, so their abilities were different. Dean's heart quivered. Was the real ability of his magic marks not the super sense of smell, but the ability to digest cold crystals? Or was the ability to digest cold crystals just one of the characteristics? Dudian couldn't help but get excited. If that was the case, then he could secretly use cold crystals in the future. There was no need to hand them over. Although a cold crystal was equivalent to a gold coin, which was 10,000 copper coins. It was equivalent to 10,000 yuan in the old era. But he had seen the cruelty outside the giant wall. Naturally, he wouldn't be confused by money. When you go to the finance department and show your identity card, you can get your gold coins. As for other materials, they're still being appraised in the Temple of Elements. It will take some time to estimate the price. Generally, it will take about half a month or at most 1 month. Dayton smiled. Dudian was surprised. Temple of Elements? Dayton smiled, but didn't elaborate. The people from the headquarters should come soon. You go outside and wait. Dudian saw that Dayton didn't want to say more. He got up and said, "Thank you, Mr. Dayton. I'll leave now." "Okay." Dayton looked at the middle-aged butler after Dean left the room. "What do you think?" "Very smart. A young fellow with great potential," the middle-aged butler said respectfully. Dayton nodded slightly, sighed, and said, "Yes, it's a pity. After all, he doesn't have a light physique, so his lifespan won't be long. Even if he doesn't die in the mouths of monsters, he will sooner or later be crippled by the corrosion of radiation, unless he can buy the light divine water. But the price of this thing is too high, and only top hunters have the capital to buy a little." "What a pity." The middle-aged butler nodded. Dayton gently tapped the pen on the table. The little guy must know the truth about the death of the hunter in area number 8. But if he doesn't say it, then we can interrogate him. Even the headquarters won't be willing to interrogate him. After all, they have lost a hunter, and it's rare to find a new replacement. Moreover, he has the magic marks of the fear-infected. That group of guys should leave it at that. The middle-aged butler nodded slightly. It said that the fear-infected's body was burned to death. He was a bit nervous when he spoke, but his eyes were very calm. There is no way to disguise it. I suspect that he was burned to death. Yes. Dayton nodded slightly. He naturally saw this point. Although Dudian's camouflage was very good, but his ability to see people was still extremely sharp. Melon Consortium. Hunter Headquarters. In an office castle. Bang. A slender white palm fiercely hit the table. The palm belonged to a woman in scarlet armor. She angrily stared at the bald, middle-aged man behind the desk. She almost roared, "My brother is my only relative. Do you want my brother to die in such an inexplicable way?" I have checked. Huashan Consortium and the military have recently recruited new hunters. I just want the headquarters to help me ask them personally. The bald, middle-aged man looked calm. He looked at the woman's spittle splashing on his face, but he didn't wipe it. He quietly said, "You should be clear that we have no evidence. Even if their hunters sneak in, they can only blame the patrolling hunters in Area Number 8 for their negligence. They didn't detect it in time. Besides, the forensic doctor has already done the autopsy. Your brother did die in the body of the defiler. He has been digested to the point where only some residue and soft armor fragments are left. I know you are angry, but the monster that killed your brother is already dead. What else do you want?" "I want revenge," the Scarlet Woman roared. "Even if my brother was killed by the fear infected, I will not allow others to pick up the fruits of my brother's labor. There was no parasitic soul worm in the body of the fear infected. There must be someone else beside it. Why? Why let my brother die in vain while he harvests the spoils of war?" The bald, middle-aged man calmly said, "I understand that you can't accept it for a while, but I will never allow you to do anything that will hurt the interests of the consortium. You better not make any small moves. The consortium will investigate this matter and give you an explanation." "Hurt the interests of the consortium?" The Scarlet Woman couldn't help but laugh. Tears welled up in her eyes. "My brother is dead, and you talk to me about benefits? Do you think I don't know how much benefits I have brought to the consortium over the years?" The bald, middle-aged man knew that he had made a slip of the tongue. He frowned slightly and said, "I've already said that the consortium will give you a satisfactory explanation. If we find that person and prove that he's from another consortium, we won't let him pass. You don't need to worry about this. However, you can't act on your own. If the other consortiums get hold of this, you'll suffer a great loss." The Scarlet Woman stopped laughing and looked at him mockingly. She didn't say anything and turned to leave. At this moment, the door of the room was suddenly pushed open. A guard trotted in and respectfully saluted the Scarlet Woman. Then he came in front of the bald, middle-aged man and said, "Sir, this is the news from the scavenger headquarters." The bald, middle-aged man frowned, but he still took the letter and opened it, quickly skimming through it. The bald, middle-aged man was surprised. He couldn't help but look at the back of the Scarlet Woman. Seeing that she didn't notice this, he was a little relieved. He quickly closed the letter and said, "I know. You can leave now." The Scarlet Woman, who was already at the door, heard the guard's words. Her figure suddenly stopped. Her eyes were slightly red and revealed a cold, murderous aura. Then she disappeared from the door. After the Scarlet Woman left, the bald, middle-aged man quickly took out a new letter and quickly issued an order. Chapter 81. Dean came to the finance department on the first floor of the headquarters hall. He received the gold coins for the 7 cold crystals that he had handed over. These 7 gold coins were equivalent to the savings of an ordinary family in the residential district for more than 10 years. Even Jura and her husband, who had a good position, only had a monthly salary of 5 or 6 silver coins, which was already considered as a high salary class. Although a gold coin was equivalent to 10,000 yuan in the old era, but in this era, the salary of the basic class was extremely low. Just like in the early days of the old era, the monthly salary of the basic class was very low. Just like in the early days of the old era, 1 or 200 yuan per month was considered good. A household with 10,000 yuan could be called a small landlord. And this was only a small part of Dean's scavenging income. Dean held the heavy and smooth gold coins. His heart could not help but sigh, but he was not excited. After all, this was exchanged with his life. Moreover, if he wasn't a hunter, he would only be able to get 7 silver coins. That was 2 months' salary of the basic class of workers. Therefore, if a scavenger wanted to get rich quickly, he had to rely on luck to pick up particularly precious items. I don't know how much the other things I brought back are worth, Dean secretly thought. Although he had 7 gold coins in his hand, he could be regarded as rich in the residential area. But alchemy was a money-burning profession. This amount of money could not satisfy his appetite. After putting the gold coins into his pocket, Dean went to the hall to sit and wait. Not long after, there was a sudden commotion outside the headquarters hall. Dean looked up and saw a tall woman in scarlet armor pushing open the door of the hall and striding in. Her face was incomparably cold and full of chilliness. Dean glanced at the silver eagle medal on her shoulder. This was the hunter medal. 3 years ago, he had seen it on Fino and Rudolph, who led him to the hunter's castle. However, the eagle medal of the 2 men was bronze, but this woman's was silver. The staff in the hall and several consortium scavengers who were about to go on a mission also noticed the medal on the woman's shoulder. After all, her armor was too strange. The scarlet color was like flowing blood, and the style was different from the scavenger soft armor of Dean and others. It was easy to attract attention. It's the hunter. The people in the hall suddenly quieted down and carefully looked at the woman. Ask the person in charge here to come out. The scarlet-armored woman stood in the middle of the hall and said in a cold voice. The 2 girls in front of the reception desk looked nervous. One of them hurriedly answered and trotted into the room next door. Soon, Peter and the manager of the room came out together. When they saw the badge on the scarlet-armored woman's shoulder, their complexion changed. They quickly bowed and respectfully said, "Greetings, Miss Hunter. I didn't know you would come." "Cut the crap." The scarlet-armored woman raised her hand and interrupted them. "Call the scavengers who are going to the 8th area, now," she said coldly. Peter and the skinny old man were surprised. They looked at each other and saw the meaning in each other's eyes. Peter respectfully said, "Sir Hunter, they have returned to their respective residences. It will take some time to gather them. Please wait a moment." The scarlet-armored woman looked at him coldly and said, "Don't dawdle. If I don't see him before sunset, just you wait." Peter's forehead overflowed with cold sweat. Yes, absolutely don't dare to delay." The scarlet-armored woman slightly looked up and glanced around. She came to the rest area where Dean was and sat down on the sofa. Her eyes saw Dean, who was drinking milk tea. Her eyebrows raised. Peter followed her figure and noticed Dean. He couldn't help but secretly shouted, "Boy, haven't you seen the hunter? What are you doing? Quickly salute and get out of here." Dean saw a trace of anxiety in Peter's eyes. He immediately understood that Peter wanted to give him some time. Listening to the woman's previous words, it was obviously related to the hunter who died in the 8th area. He couldn't help but frown. He didn't expect trouble to come to his door so soon. However, he wasn't worried about anything. He nodded to the scarlet woman and got up to leave. "Wait." The scarlet woman suddenly looked up at him. "Are you a new scavenger?" Dean paused and looked back at her. "Yes." "So?" The scarlet woman narrowed her eyes. "Have you been to the 8th area?" Dean looked at her eyes that were getting colder and colder. It seemed that as long as he nodded, she would immediately attack. This kind of killing intent made him slightly frown. There was a bit of disgust in his heart. Yes. The killing intent in the scarlet woman's eyes suddenly soared. The original brown-gray eyes became a bit dark red. She coldly said, "Little devil, why didn't you die? How could a lowly trash like you be able to survive? Why didn't you die?" As she spoke, the skin on her arm became a little red, as if it was congested. Peter saw the scene and hurriedly said, "Mr. Hunter, Dean is our seed target. He is specially cultivated by the headquarters. He has the potential to become a hunter in the future. Please don't be offended by him. If he has offended you, I will make sure that he will apologize to you. Get out." The scarlet woman roared. Peter was stunned by the roar. The scarlet woman slowly stood up and stared at Dean condescendingly. Her eyes were full of resentment, anger, and sadness. Dean thought that she had investigated the evidence left by him. He didn't expect that she was just angry at him. Seeing the sadness and anger in her strange eyes, he couldn't help but ask, "I heard that a hunter died in the 8th area. Who is he to you?" "Shut up." The Scarlet Woman angrily raised her hand to slap him. Dean's face slightly changed. He quickly leaned back to escape the slap. At the same time, he quickly retreated a few steps to open the distance. When he looked at her again, there was a bit of anger and killing intent in his heart. If this slap was on an ordinary scavenger like Mason, he would at least be seriously injured. He was very clear about the strength of a hunter. At the same time, he also believed that the strength of this woman must be stronger than him. Peter was also shocked when he saw the other side attack. When he saw Dean dodge the slap, he was shocked and speechless. The Scarlet Woman was also startled. She looked up at Dean. The grief and anger in her eyes suddenly turned cold. "You are a new scavenger. Even if you have been blessed 20 or even 30 times, you may not have such a reaction speed. Who the hell are you?" Dean's eyes became cold. Although he knew that the woman was sad and angry, but from the merciless slap, it was obvious that she didn't care about the severity. Perhaps in the eyes of the other side, even if she accidentally killed a scavenger, she would only get a few words of criticism. Even Consortium would take the initiative to shelter her and help her destroy the evidence and confession to avoid the judgment of the magistrate. Because the punishment for killing was too light, she didn't care about life. "Today, I will remember this slap." Dean stared at her and said, "If others give me a benefit, I will return it tenfold. If they give me a pain, I will retaliate 100-fold." Chapter 82. Stop! Suddenly, a light shout resounded. A burly figure quickly appeared between Dean and the Scarlet Woman. He raised his hand and grabbed the Scarlet Woman's thigh. The moment he touched the thigh, the surging force made his face change slightly. He took 2 steps back to resist the momentum. The Scarlet Woman turned around and landed on the ground. She coldly looked at the burly figure in front of Dean. "Bud, get out of the way." The burly middle-aged man named Bud slightly frowned. "Don't mess around, Linda. This little brother is a new hunter. I came here on behalf of the hunter headquarters to appoint him." The eyes of the people in the hall suddenly fell on Dean's body. They were full of disbelief. Peter and the lean old man slightly opened their mouths, dumbfounded. Dean looked at the woman. He thought that it was a coincidence that she came. Otherwise, he would have to run out of the street to avoid the attack of this crazy woman. A new hunter? Linda was slightly startled. Suddenly, she thought of something. Her face quickly turned gloomy. Her brown eyes turned completely dark red. Dark red blood vessels appeared on her arms. Her whole body was shrouded in a bloody aura. She fiercely said, "So, the one who picked up the bargain is this little devil?" Bud frowned. "I know that your brother is dead. You are very sad, but I hope you don't make a mistake. You should know how serious the consequences are if you attack a hunter from the same consortium. Don't destroy your future." The Scarlet Woman didn't seem to hear his words. She stared at Dean with blood-red eyes. "Did you watch my brother being eaten by a monster? Why didn't you get eaten? Why? You're just a scavenger. What qualifications do you have to have magic marks?" Dean looked at her indifferently and didn't speak. The Scarlet Woman stared at him. After a while, the killing intent on her face suddenly disappeared little by little, and the dark red veins on her arms gradually disappeared into her skin. She licked her lips and said, "Little thing, you just said that you will take revenge on me 100-fold, right?" Bud was relieved when he saw her restrain her killing intent. If the other party recklessly rushed over, he may not be able to stop her. He immediately turned to Dean. "Your name is Dean, right? Apologize to Linda, and this matter will be over. In the future, both of you will still be partners in the mission. It's just a misunderstanding. Why make it unpleasant?" Dean frowned. His intuition told him that this woman would never give up. But considering the consequences, he temporarily held back his killing intent. Even if he apologized, it was impossible to let this matter pass. Most importantly, why should he apologize? Just because your brother is dead, you can vent your anger on others? Even if it was revenge, it was your younger brother who took the initiative to harm others. Could it be that others were not allowed to retaliate? Don't apologize, little thing. Didn't you say that you want to retaliate against me? I welcome it. The Scarlet Woman, Linda, said in a feminine tone. Dean's face was cold as he indifferently said, Really? I didn't expect that the hunter who was eaten was your brother. No wonder you were so angry. I can understand. After all, his death was very ugly and miserable. Linda's eyes suddenly became cold. Her fingers clenched into fists. Her knuckles made cracking sounds, but she finally loosened her hands. She left the hall without looking back. She quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Bud smiled and looked back at Dean. Little brother, you are really good. You are overpraising me. Compared to her, I am still too far away. After all, she used her hands, but I could only use my mouth. Dean calmly said. Bud sighed. Don't blame her. Her parents died early, so she and her brother were dependent on each other. Who knew that her brother would die? Her emotional disorder is normal. Dean looked at him strangely. There are many orphans in the world. Do you think you can vent your anger on innocent people just because your loved ones died? Her brother was eaten by a monster. She didn't vent her anger on the monsters, but on us, the weak scavengers. Isn't the life of a scavenger important? Just because their status is not as high as hers, they can be bullied and humiliated. Moreover, after being bullied and humiliated, do you want to understand her? Sympathize with her? Bud was startled. He was speechless. Forget it. Bud slightly shook his head. He didn't continue to talk about this issue. There was a trace of smile on his face. You are not a scavenger. I am here at the request of the headquarters to appoint you as a hunter and award you a medal. Dean nodded slightly and no longer said anything. But in his heart, he secretly remembered this woman. This matter wouldn't end here. There were the rules of the consortium. This woman may not harm him on the surface, but she would secretly trip him up. Instead of waiting for others to take the initiative to find trouble, it was better to take the initiative to attack. This is the hunter contract. After signing it, you will be an official hunter of the consortium. Bud pulled out a document from his bag and handed it to Dean. Dean temporarily put away the plan in his mind and carefully read the hunter contract. It was roughly the same as the scavenger contract. The only difference was the proportion of shares and the implementation of tasks. There are also various benefits. The hunter would get a free house in the commercial district of the consortium, as well as a property certificate. However, the property certificate didn't have inheritance rights. In other words, when the hunter died, the house would return to the hands of the consortium. In addition, the hunter would get 10 God's blessings every month. As a seed target, he only got 1 per month. But now the treatment of God's blessings was 10 times better. As for other aspects of treatment, it was even more amazing. The hunter could enjoy a 30% discount in all the industries under the consortium. It was equivalent to a VIP level of preferential treatment. The industries of the Melon Consortium involved coal mining, real estate, hotels, slaves, transportation, and so on. Each of these industries had a large number of chain stores. Therefore, this 30% discount was by no means a small benefit. Dean read the contract one by one. After sweeping through the benefits, he looked at other restrictive clauses. After determining that there were no unbearable clauses, he signed his name. This is your hunter medal. Bud handed a bronze eagle medal to Dean. Dean took a look and asked, Her medal is silver. What does it mean? Bud smiled. It seems that you are very careful. She has recently been promoted to bloody swordsman. She has become an intermediate hunter. We commonly call her Silver Hunter. She is your superior. When you perform tasks, the captain is a Silver Hunter. Dean slightly frowned. It would be very dangerous if he was assigned to the same team as this woman during the next task. This is the Hunter's Handbook. You can go back and read it slowly. It is about the hunter, but remember not to show it to other non-hunter personnel. In addition, if you lose your medal, be sure to find the headquarters and apply for it. Bud handed out a small booklet. Chapter 83. You have just been appointed. You have 7 days to adjust and rest. Bude smiled and said, After 7 days, you will go to the headquarters to report. Although you have hunter magic marks, but you are still lacking in other aspects. Hunters have different positions. The specifics are written here. You can go back and think about it. Dean thought of the bloody swordsman he had mentioned before. He nodded. I know. In addition, it is recommended that you live in the commercial district. Hunters are not scavengers. Sometimes there will be an emergency gathering. Efficiency is the most important. For example, if a monster is detected in a certain area, you need to be dispatched immediately to prevent the monster from running away. So hunters are usually on standby in the commercial district. Dean understood and nodded. The air and radiation content in the commercial district were better than the residential district. Even if Bud didn't mention it, he would have moved here. This time he brought Jura and her husband to live together with him. It was also a way to repay their adoption. If there is nothing else, I'll go first. Bud laughed. Dadian watched him leave the hall. He looked at the booklet and medal in his hand. As for the hunter armor, he should report to the headquarters after 7 days. So he wasn't in a hurry to collect it. At this time, Peter and the skinny old man cautiously approached Dean. They looked at the genuine hunter medal in Dean's hand. They couldn't believe it. However, the two of them were able to sit in this position. Their eyesight was extremely keen. They had guessed the general reason from the previous conversation and performance between Bud and Linda. Dean. Peter's face was somewhat unnatural as he smiled. I didn't expect you to be a hunter. Congratulations. Congratulations. The skinny old man also congratulated him. Dean smiled. It's all because of your training. I won't forget the care you have given me. Not at all. Peter quickly waved his hand. It's what we should do. It's your own efforts that have made you. I thought that in a few years you might have the opportunity to become a hunter. I didn't expect that in the blink of an eye you would have the bronze medal in your hand. As expected of a seed candidate. Impressive, impressive. The skinny old man echoed. Dean felt a bit unnatural as he was praised by them. He knew that his identity had changed, so he didn't take the initiative to say that they didn't need to be too polite. On the contrary, it would make him look superior. At the same time, he realized the terrible changes in the system. This was a change that went deep into the bone marrow. He secretly sighed in his heart. He had seen the cruelty outside the giant wall. It was very difficult for him to integrate into the consortium or other ordinary work system. This was why he didn't want to bow his head in front of that woman. Instead, he bluntly expressed his inner anger. First, he knew that bowing his head was useless. Second, he didn't want to. Anyone who had seen the fragility of life and the possibility of dying in the middle of a mission at any time would not be willing to tolerate the humiliation of others. Perhaps this was the reason why hunters had such a strong character and hostility. I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first. Dadian looked at Peter and the old man. I'll come back when I have time. I have 3 good brothers, so I'll have to trouble you two to take care of them. Leave it to me. Peter smiled. Dean nodded slightly and left the hall after saying goodbye to them. Peter and the old man looked at each other and sighed with emotion. Other people in the hall were envious and jealous. They knew that Dean would live in a world that they couldn't touch. It's time to go back. Outside the headquarters hall, Dean called a consortium carriage and went to the residential area. On the way, he sat in the carriage and flipped through the thin booklet in his hand. He saw that the information inside was divided into several chapters. The first chapter was about the purpose and responsibility of the hunters. Dean naturally knew that it was to hunt the monsters outside the giant wall. The second chapter was about the types of hunters. There are a total of 4 professions, namely knight, warrior, thief, and hunter. For positions are responsible for different work. Hunters pay attention to team action. Whether it is the efficiency of hunting monsters or the degree of safety, they are maximized. Knight and warrior are responsible for attracting the monsters in the front. Thief is responsible for scouting the surrounding environment. Hunter is responsible for long-range attack. Dean sighed in his heart. This is like modern war. There are infantry who are responsible for the front row firepower output and attracting the enemy. There are Air Force surprise attacks and artillery long-range attacks. It seems that whether it is a large-scale operation or a small group operation, there are no more than 3 aspects: frontal containment, long-range attack, and intelligence collection. All primary hunters are basic professions. After mastering the various abilities of the profession, you can pass the advanced assessment and become an intermediate hunter. At the same time, you can choose different specialties. Knight's advancement has shield knight, beast knight, and so on. Swordsman also has shield swordsman and battle swordsman. The previous woman was called bloody swordsman. It was a combination of her ability and the title given by others. In fact, she should be a battle swordsman. Dean understood that the hunter he had killed before should be a hunter. Hunter was responsible for tracking the enemy and long-range shooting. In the long history of the development of hunters, there's been a systematic distribution within the giant wall. This way, the benefits and efficiency can be maximized. After all, people's energy is limited. Everyone specializes in one thing. Through teamwork, even if the monster is much stronger than them, they can easily kill it. Previously, Bud asked me to think about it so that I can choose my future position. Dean thoughtfully said, Knights are mainly good at close combat, but the monsters outside the giant wall are much stronger than hunters. If it is a frontal confrontation, I will suffer a loss. I need to cooperate with long-range hunters to have high efficiency. Thieves are mainly good at traps and assassination. Their frontal ability is too weak, and it is troublesome to arrange traps. Gunpowder, firearms, these things will be my secret weapons. Before I grow up, I naturally can't easily reveal them in front of others. So I'm suitable for single combat. Only thieves and hunters have the ability to fight alone. Among them, hunters are more independent. As long as the environment cooperates, they can easily kill monsters that are much stronger than themselves. Just like that hunter, he only needs a few scavengers to help him to kill that giant black beast. Thinking of this, Dean immediately made up his mind that he will mainly learn to be a hunter. Moreover, the concept of gunpowder helped him open up his mind. The first time he saw a hunter, his mind flashed. He thought that if he tied gunpowder to his bow and arrow, wouldn't the lethality increase by several times? Chapter 84. Commercial District, Radiation Boundary, Mullen Street. This was the property of the Mel family. It was also the place where most of the hunters of the Mellon Consortium lived. Most of the houses allocated by the Consortium to the hunters were concentrated in this area. The main reason was that it was close to the giant wall. It was relatively faster to gather the hunters in an emergency. Moreover, it was difficult for the prey to escape. At the moment, in a small European-style building on Mullen Street, Linda was sitting in the living room on the third floor. She had a gloomy face. In addition to her, Gail and another young man, as well as a dark-skinned girl, were also sitting here. They were Linda's team members and often went on missions together. They had a deep relationship with each other. So when they got the news, they rushed over. "Boss, is it really a scavenger kid?" Another young man couldn't believe it. He is just a scavenger, but he has the courage to set fire to the defiler. He is too bold. Even I was scared to death when I saw such a monster. It took me a long time to get used to it. "So, you are very mediocre." Linda indifferently looked up at him. "This little guy is the top graduate of the scavenger school. He was first in all 3 categories. Although it is just a scavenger's little tricks, but he can climb to the top in any field. He is not a small character." Gail deeply nodded. "I heard that this little guy threatened you to retaliate." "Well, retaliate against the captain?" The dark-skinned girl frowned. "The ignorant are fearless. He thinks that by becoming a hunter, he can be on an equal footing with the others. He's just a lucky and bold little devil. If he can say such words, then it means that he has reached this point. In my opinion, although we can't kill him openly, but there are many ways to make him suffer. Or we can hire assassins and kill him in secret." Linda slowly shook her head and coldly said, "There are many ways to kill him. Even if I kill him on the surface, he's still valuable to the Consortium. But if he's dead, he's worthless. The Consortium won't do anything to me. At most, they'll punish me or make me perform a few more missions. But it's not worth it. He's not worthy enough to make me pay the price." Gail nodded. "Yes, even if we secretly assassinate him now, the Consortium will know about it. Although there is no evidence, but this kind of behavior against the consortium will certainly cause displeasure. It will be inevitable that they will gradually suppress us. Yes, Linda nodded. The dark-skinned girl understood. She thought for a moment. In that case, we won't kill him for the time being, but let him suffer a little. Isn't he going to live in the commercial district? We can make him feel better about the house. We will cut off his water supply and see how he will live. In addition, everyone in the consortium will give you some face. As long as you say it, I can guarantee that he will be very uncomfortable from the moment he steps into the hunter headquarters. Linda indifferently said, "These little tricks are meaningless. Using such little tricks will make the higher-ups look down on me. Moreover, it will alert the enemy. During this time, we will let this little devil have a good time. Once he arrives outside the giant wall, I will let him suffer a fate worse than death." Gale nodded. There is no law outside the giant wall. If he dies, then he dies, as long as he doesn't leave any evidence. But after he arrives at the hunter headquarters, he will receive vocational training. The shortest is a few months, and the longest is 1 or 2 years. We will have to wait for a long time. Linda coldly smiled. It won't be easy for him to have a safe and steady training. If my guess is right, he will choose the hunter profession. This profession is a perfect match for his super sense of smell. Once he chooses this profession, I will let him die a very ugly death. Oh, Gale and the other two looked at her curiously. In case of an emergency, trainee hunters like him will also be sent outside the giant wall. Linda's eyes were cold as she looked at Gale. You are also a hunter. There are very few hunters in the consortium. If you're injured and other hunters have their own tasks, what do you think the consortium will do in case of an emergency? The three were startled. Their eyes suddenly lit up. Haha, the boss is smart. Another youth laughed. The dark-skinned girl sighed. He is indeed the captain. He hasn't learned the basic skills of a hunter yet. If he is sent outside the giant wall, even if the consortium intends to transfer him to another team, as long as we say a word, the other team will see him as a hindrance. They will certainly not treat him well. Yes, Gale nodded. The scarlet killing intent in Linda's eyes slowly converged. Let's not talk about this matter for the time being. The main reason why I called you here is because of the task. We are going to area number 3. You should prepare well. Area number 3? Gale and the other two were surprised. I have long heard that most of the monsters in area number 3 are around level 10. There are even monsters that can reach level 20. Of course, it is better if we don't encounter those monsters. If the captain takes the lead, we can hunt some monsters that are level 10 and make a fortune. The dark-skinned girl said with a smile. Another youth's eyes lit up. I have heard that there is a giant deer in area number 3. The oil in its body is the highest level lamp oil. It is more expensive than gold. Gale slightly frowned. Wealth and danger are equal. There are many teams that have fallen in area number 3. We have to be careful. Linda nodded and said, Yes, but our goal this time is to find named monsters. There should be a great chance of encountering a rare monster at the level of Dreadtainer. If you can kill one, your magic marks will evolve again. Hearing this, Gale and the other two's eyes lit up. Dean closed the book. The second chapter described the details of other privileges of hunters and the details of the profession. He simply looked at it. By this time, the carriage had passed the boundary wall and arrived at the residential area. After a while, the carriage stopped in the middle of Lincoln Street. Dean got off the carriage with his luggage. Because of the consortium's carriage, he didn't have to pay the fare. He looked at the familiar white guardrail. There was a bit of nostalgia in his heart. Who is it? Jura opened the door and saw Dean at the door. Her face was full of surprise. You are back. Come in. Dean nodded and went into the house. Chapter 85. Dean saw the joy in his eyes and the scattered white hairs in his hair. He suddenly felt that although they adopted him, but he didn't fulfill his obligations as a son. Although 3 years ago he was engaged to the Avril family, but the hatred in his heart has long been soothed. His father often said that people are not saints, so who can avoid mistakes? You have lost so much weight after leaving for more than 10 days. Jura looked at Dean distressed. Gray smiled. Come sit down and talk. Dean nodded slightly and put down the bag. He came to the table and talked with them about the business district. As for the task, it was confidential, so he didn't want to talk about it. Did you say that you have been recognized by the consortium and promoted? Gray was surprised when he heard Dean's words. It was the first time he was going to be promoted? Wasn't it too fast? Dean took out the key. The consortium has assigned me a house. We can move to a new house later. Jura was stunned. Directly assigned a house? So generous. Gee, the Melon Consortium is really something. Gray apparently had heard the news about the Melon Consortium. He sighed and shook his head. However, your mother and I have been living here for too long. We are very familiar with the surrounding neighbors. Moving to a new place is not easy. Moreover, my work is not far from home. Dudian said, Well, then I can only live alone in the commercial district. Dean regretfully said, Well, you're about to reach the age of marriage. You should learn to be independent. Huh? Wait, what did you just say? Live in the commercial district? You mean the house assigned to you by the consortium is in the commercial district? Yes. When can we move there? Anytime. Ha ha. Gray suddenly laughed. His lifelong pursuit was to live in the commercial district and see the life of the people. He didn't expect that such a wish would come true so suddenly. Jura covered her mouth and chuckled. She looked at Dean with eyes full of concern and gratification. She didn't expect Dean to give them such a big surprise. Dean couldn't help but smile when he saw them so happy. Suddenly, he thought of something. He took out a gold coin from his arms and said, This is what I earned during the mission. I borrowed a lot from you before. The rest is filial piety. Gray and Jura were surprised when they saw the gold coin. They didn't expect to earn 1 gold coin in just 10 days. This was much higher than their salary. It was simply incomparable. You earned this. Jura couldn't help but ask, What is your task? Is it very difficult? You were sent for training in the past, and your guard. Don't tell me your mission is very dangerous? Years of living had taught her that effort and gain were proportional. There was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Even if there was one, it would be in the trash can. Dean smiled and said, No, we are not going to war. There is no danger. The task is more complicated, so we need training. Most people can't do it. He grinned. Jura looked at him suspiciously. Really? Dean nodded with absolute certainty. Jura was relieved and laughed. So, you really have the ability. When I first saw you, I felt that you were different from other children. Suddenly, she felt her husband's arm touch her and winked at her. She suddenly realized that she shouldn't continue to talk about the orphanage, so as not to evoke Dean's memories. Dean noticed Gray's small movements, but didn't care. Instead, he felt a little guilty. He knew that although he could be good to them, but he would never forget his biological parents and his sister, who loved him since childhood. They firmly occupied too much position in his heart. No one could replace them. After we move to the new house, I'll help you get a position in the consortium. Dean said to the two, In this way, you don't have to work. You can get a basic salary every month. You don't have to be so frugal. Eat what you should eat. Use what you should use. I'll make a lot of money in the future. This was one of his hunter privileges. As long as he used his connections, he could pick a gap in the various industrial chains of the consortium. Gray laughed. I'm still healthy. I don't need you to take care of me. Although you earn a lot, but you can't spend money carelessly. You should save it to marry a wife and have children in the future. Do you understand? Speaking of this, Jura suddenly smiled. Dean, a few days ago, I met an aunt. She's a very good person. Her daughter is almost at the age of marriage. She wants to meet you. What do you think? Dean's face turned red. He was quite embarrassed. You are almost at the age of marriage. You should consider it. Gray also said. Dean blushed with shame. He was still a quarter away from 12 years old. 13 years old was the legal age for marriage. Moreover, in his worldview, even if he was 13 years old, he was just a kid. He couldn't get married and have children. But in this era, people were aging fast. Diseases, disasters, and other problems would take a lot of lives every year. Even if the radiation accumulated in the body, people would lose fertility, so they would get married very early. But he couldn't adapt to this. "I'll think about it when I reach the age of marriage," Dean euphemistically said. Jura saw the persistence in Dean's eyes. She helplessly said, "Well, I won't force you if you don't want to. But you really don't want to see her daughter. I've seen her. She is absolutely a little beauty." "I agree," Grace said with a smile. Jura rolled her eyes at him. Dean shook his head again and again. It would be more hurtful to refuse when they met. However, his heart suddenly thought of that moonlit night. They sat side by side in the pavilion in the garden. They looked up at the gray moon and chatted for a whole night. His heartbeat slightly accelerated. He secretly thought, "I don't know what she is doing now. Will it be too abrupt if I go to find her directly?" Thinking of this, his thoughts drifted away. That night, Dean accompanied Jura and Barton to chat very late. The next morning, just after dawn, Dean's biological clock pulled him up on time. After a simple wash and breakfast, he said goodbye to Jura and Barton and went out. He took a carriage to the slums. Last night, Jura mentioned the orphanage. It made his heart a little anxious. Although he had only lived with Barton for a few months, but now 3 years had passed. Their faces were blurred in his mind. But in his heart, he still remembered that when he first came to the orphanage, it was them who accompanied him. He was very clear about what kind of treatment orphans would face once they passed the age of adoption. Chapter 86. As soon as he returned to the slums, the stench in the air made Dean frown slightly. Now his sense of smell was different from the past. He could smell the slightest odor, not to mention the faint odor that ordinary people could smell. For him, it was very strong. For a while, he felt nauseous and dizzy. This was the physical discomfort caused by the pungent smell. Dean slightly covered his nose, waiting for his body to adapt. At the same time, he realized that an overly strong sense of smell was also a fatal weakness. In the future, if I meet other hunters with such super senses, I can use this method to deal with them. Advantages are disadvantages. It seems that everything has two sides. Dean flashed such an idea in his mind. He got off the carriage and went along the streets. As the saying goes, staying in the toilet for a long time doesn't smell bad. As Dean stayed longer, the feeling of physical discomfort gradually faded. He did not go directly to Maishan Orphanage, but along the path, came to the garbage dump that he had been to 3 years ago. As he approached, the strong rotten smell was getting heavier and heavier. When he arrived at the garbage dump, Dean suddenly saw that several garbage mountains that were previously piled up here had been flattened. There were garbage residues and a newly piled up garbage mountain on the ground. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. Although he had expected that the garbage here would be cleaned up, he didn't expect it to be removed so quickly. "I heard that last year there was a plague in the slums, causing many people to be infected. Now the Black Death season is coming again, and the temperature is rising. It is estimated that this pile of garbage was cleaned up not long ago." Dean had some regrets. If he was not selected to go to scavenger special training 3 years ago, he could rely on the remaining energy of the freezer in the garbage dump to learn a lot of knowledge, far more than what he learned in the special training. But at that time, he had no ability to resist and could only obey the arrangement. Just like the conscription in the old era, without a strong background, he had to serve. My freezer was also moved away. It is very likely that it was seen when it was being moved. As long as the news is leaked with the intelligence network of various consortia and military, they should not let the freezer be left outside. After all, such a metal object can be seen from the outside. Perhaps at this moment, it has been moved somewhere and secretly studied. Fortunately, I did not leave my photo inside. Otherwise, it would be big trouble. Dean secretly thought. At this time, he suddenly smelled something approaching, and suddenly his face turned cold. This was the advantage of the sense of smell. Before the eyes could see, they could detect in advance. He looked back and saw 2 middle-aged men and a young man in ragged clothes coming out from the back alley. The 3 of them surrounded him from 3 different directions. They were holding sticks, rusty hatchet, and dirty black stones in their hands. They stared at Dean gloomily and approached him step by step. "Brat, The middle-aged man with disheveled hair in the middle growled, "If you know what's good for you, hand over your money and clothes." 3 refugees. Dean looked at their clothes and knew their identity. Even in the slums, they were at the bottom of the society. Refugees were equivalent to homeless people. Moreover, their bodies had accumulated excessive radiation. Even if they were to work as coolies, few places would accept them so as not to affect the health of others. "Aren't you going to kill me?" Dean faintly smiled. The 3 of them looked at each other. From the fine fabric of Dean's clothes, they knew that Dean was not from their slums, so they just wanted to rob the money and leave. Once he killed someone, especially in the residential area, most of the magistrate would be involved in the investigation. This was what they were afraid of. However, they did not expect that the brat did not seem to have the slightest fear on his face. "Brat, don't talk nonsense, or I'll waste you." The middle-aged man gritted his teeth and shouted. Dean's figure flashed and suddenly flew out. Bang, bang. As the middle-aged man said, Dean was really too lazy to be long-winded. He knocked the 3 of them to the ground. He was about to ask them about the whereabouts of the garbage dump, but suddenly thought that if the freezer was taken away by the military or other forces for investigation, maybe they would send someone to keep an eye on this place and investigate who had placed the freezer in the garbage dump. Thinking of this, he could not help but be surprised. He was somewhat glad that if he went to ask, it was equal to falling into the trap. He immediately cut off the idea, kicked the middle-aged man, and shouted, "Let me ask you, how to get to the Maischen orphanage? I'm lost." The middle-aged man's face was full of horror. It was difficult to understand how such a little guy could have such terrible speed and strength. However, just as the perception of the residential district towards the commercial district was mysterious and yearning, the residential district was also mysterious in the slums. He didn't dare to think too much and hurriedly said, "Yes, go out of this road and turn left. After crossing 2 streets, turn right. At that time, just ask someone and you will know." Dean snorted and turned away. He naturally knew the way to the Maischen orphanage. He just wanted to explain the reason why he came here through the mouth of the middle-aged man. If there was any force secretly observing here, or if they wanted to investigate here, they would not suspect him. The energy of the freezer has been exhausted. If the overall level of technology and industry has not been improved, it is impossible to research anything. But this is the only thing left to me by my parents. If I find out who took it, I must get it back. Dean secretly said in his heart. After 10 minutes of walking, he came to the front of the Maischen orphanage. The orphanage located on the hillside was still very dilapidated. 3 years had only made it more old. Dean saw a slightly chubby woman in front of the gate, sweeping the sparse lawn in front of the orphanage. "Aunt Di," Dean shouted. The middle-aged woman turned back in surprise and looked at Dean with doubt. "You are Dean." Dean smiled. There weren't many children in the orphanage. In just 3 years, she hadn't forgotten the boy. Moreover, among all the children she had seen, the fair-skinned boy had left a deep impression on her. She couldn't help but look at Dean from head to toe. The outline of his face overlapped with her memory. She said happily, "Dean, you are back. How are you? How are you with your parents?" "Very good." Dean smiled. "I came back to see Barton and Joseph." Daly was stunned. "Joseph is still in the orphanage. But you can't see Barton. He has been sent to the coal mine last year." Dean slightly frowned. He remembered that Barton should have just turned 13 years old. Even if he was sent to the mine, it should be during the black snow season. However, it was useless to say anything more to Daly. He immediately said, "I understand. I'll go to the mine to find him later. I'll have to trouble Aunt Di to call Joseph, Crone, and Barry out. I want to redeem their residences." Chapter 87. Dean nodded slightly. He was naturally aware of this point, but with his current status, it was not a problem to lift the registration of a slave. Moreover, the Maischen orphanage was the property of the Mel family. His words were not light. He immediately said, "Let's call Joseph and the others out first. I will take them away from here." Daly said anxiously, "It'll take a lot of money to redeem them. If you steal more than 1 silver coin, You'll be sent to jail. Don't be stupid. This is my own money. Dean knew that he couldn't explain to her in a few words. He took out his medal and said, I have been selected as a guard. The monthly salary is quite high. Daly was astonished. You become a guard? Dean put away the medal. Sorry to trouble you. She looked at Dean in amazement. I didn't expect you to be selected as a guard. You should be one of the most promising ones in the orphanage in the past few years. Do you remember Lisa, who was adopted in the same batch as you? She's also doing well. Although the one who adopted her is Mel's gardener. That child is smart and witty. She was recognized by Mel's miss and was accepted as a personal maid. Last year, she came back once and asked about your situation. She is also a nostalgic person. If you have any difficulties in the future, maybe you can ask her for help. Duddian was surprised. His mind suddenly recalled the time when he first adopted the girl. At that time, he felt that she was very young, but her true nature was hidden very deep. He almost suffered a loss. He didn't expect that she would be so good now. However, it had already been a few years, and he was not in the mood to argue about it. He said, I understand. After a while, 3 children ran out of the orphanage. It was Joseph, Crone, and Barry who had slept in the same dormitory as Duddian. As soon as the 3 of them came out, they saw Dean and were stunned. In the past 3 years, the few people who used a squeeze in the dormitory had changed a lot, especially Dean. He had absorbed better nutrition, and his body had developed extremely well. It was completely different from the thin appearance he had in the past. Joseph and the other 2 had changed a lot. They were half a head taller. Joseph's face was swollen. It was extremely scary. Crone's left hand was congenital deformity. His arm was only half long, and his fingers were the size of baby. Barry's situation was better. There was nothing unusual on the surface. However, Dean had seen several sarcomas on his stomach. They were the places where the radiation had condensed. Living in the orphanage, the 3 of them were much stronger than Mason and the other 2. They quickly recognized Dean. Joseph's face was full of surprise. He quickly approached Dean. Dean, how are you? Dean smiled. It's good. This time I had the opportunity to come back to see you. The main thing is to take you out of here. You don't need to bring clothes or anything else. Once you're done, we'll go find Barton. The 3 of them were stunned. Joseph stuttered. You mean you want to take us away? Dean laughed. Don't you trust me? Crone responded quickly. Of course I trust you. But Dean, do you have money? I have some. It should be enough to redeem you. Dean looked at the hope and excitement in their eyes. He knew how eager they were to leave. He laughed. Go and pack your things. I'll go and handle the household registration procedures for you. The 3 of them looked at each other, but quickly nodded. They turned and ran back to the orphanage. Dean came to the front yard of the orphanage. He saw the stout woman who had helped him last time. She was sitting behind the counter. She was yawning and listless. There was a dark-skinned little boy next to her who was massaging her legs. The little boy was quite alert. He saw Dean and gently signaled the stout woman to come in. The stout woman opened her eyes. She sat up straight as she saw Dean. There was a smile on her face. Excuse me, who are you? I'm here to redeem the children and handle the household registration procedures. Dean replied. The stout woman shook her head. If you want to adopt, you have to wait until the adoption day. I want it now. Duddian interrupted her. The so-called adoption day was the day when the orphanage was launched. The purpose was to maximize the benefits. The orphanages in this world and the orphanages of the old era were 2 different things. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were human traffickers. Moreover, they had a business license. Our rules, the stout woman quickly explained. Dean was too lazy to listen to her. He took out the guard's medal. You can only manage yourself. I want it now. You'd better handle it right away. The stout woman's face changed as she saw the medal. The guard was a public official of the military. Although Dean looked young, but his height and special training had polished his appearance to that of a 15 or 16-year-old boy. She didn't doubt him. I know. I'll handle it for you. Joseph Crone Barry. Dean reported the names of the adoptive children. The stout woman was stunned, but quickly registered. After a moment, all the procedures were completed. The fee was 2 silver coins per person. Seeing the gold coins thrown by Dean, The chunky woman immediately understood that the person in front of her was a real big shot. She did not dare to neglect and immediately gave Dean the change. At this time, Darlie came in. She saw Dean put away the contract. "How is it? Is it done?" Dean nodded slightly. "They are waiting for you outside." Darlie laughed. "I hope they will remember the kindness and repay you in the future." "You're wrong. This time I am repaying a debt of gratitude," Duddian said as he left with the three people's household registration contracts. The stout woman looked at Dean's back. "Sister Darlie, who is that person? You seem to know him?" Darlie smiled. "Do you remember the kid called Dean from 3 years ago?" "It's him." The stout woman's eyes widened. "I thought he looked familiar. How did he become a guard?" In front of the orphanage, Dean looked at Joseph and the other two who were carrying bulging bags. They were nervously waiting in the open space. He smiled and waved the contract in his hand. "Let's go. It's done. This is your household registration." The three of them trembled with excitement as they looked at the paper in front of them. Joseph's eyes were red as tears gushed out. He looked at Dean and said, Dean was embarrassed as he looked at the three of them. "Let's not be polite. Let's go. Barton is waiting for us." "Dean, I really want to thank you," Crone said in a heavy tone. "Well, otherwise we would be like Barton." Barry clenched his fists. Dean smiled. "Don't be so mushy. Let's go." Seeing this, the three of them didn't say anything else. Before they left, they turned back to look at the orphanage. They also saw Daly and the short and fat woman at the door. They didn't know that their lives would be completely changed after they left. Chapter 88. Columine was under the control of the Foster Coal Chamber of Commerce, a subsidiary of the Mell family. It mainly produced iron ore and was located in the western suburbs of the slums. Duddian called a carriage and took the three of them straight away. The number of carriages in the slums was very small. Usually, only the managers of the chambers of commerce or factories in the slums would take the carriage for the convenience of travel. It was the first time for Joseph and the other two to sit in a carriage. They were nervous and didn't dare to move for fear of dirtying the seats in the carriage. Duddian knew that they were used to the hard life, and it was difficult for them to get used to it. Half an hour later, they arrived in front of the column mine in the western suburbs. The most conspicuous and imposing building in the town in front of the mine was the Foster Coal Chamber of Commerce branch responsible for the mine. Duddian stopped the carriage in front of the Chamber of Commerce. Duddian took the lead in getting off the carriage. He paid the fare of 8 copper coins and turned to look at the Chamber of Commerce. He called Joseph and the other two to come to the front of the Chamber of Commerce. 2 young guards were chatting listlessly at the door. They straightened up a bit when they saw the newcomer, but after seeing that it was just a few children, they restored their lazy appearance. One of them looked up and down at Duddian. "This is Foster's Chamber of Commerce. What can I do for you?" Duddian said, "Let the person in charge come and see me." The two were stunned. One of them rolled his eyes and said, "Little brother, you're from the residential area, right? If you're here to buy minerals or place an order on behalf of your master, there will be someone in charge of receiving you. As for meeting our branch president, he doesn't have time to deal with you." Duddian took out the gar medal and said, "You just need to pass the message. I'm here on behalf of the Mell family." The 2 guards were stunned when they saw the crossed sword medal. They carefully looked at it to determine that it was not forged. They looked at Duddian suspiciously. The first one hesitated for a moment and said, "Wait a minute, I'll go and ask." "I haven't asked your name yet." "He is not qualified to know," Duddian indifferently said. The guard muttered in his heart when he heard Dean's tone. But Dean was, after all, a guard, although he had no right to intervene in the Chamber of Commerce. But Dean said that he came on behalf of Mell's family, so the meaning was different. Soon after, the guard ran in. Duddian also followed in. The other guard didn't dare to stop him. Duddian came to the hall of the Chamber of Commerce. He had seen the luxurious atmosphere of various buildings in the commercial district. This hall of the Chamber of Commerce in the slums was a bit shabby in his eyes. He casually found a sofa and sat down. Joseph and others also came to sit and rest. It was the first time that Joseph and others came to such a luxurious and clean place. They were nervous and restrained in their hearts. After a while, the guard returned, and a tall woman followed behind him. The guard saw Dean sitting in the hall and immediately respectfully said to the woman behind him. The woman looked at Dean. She frowned as her eyes swept over to Joseph and the other two who were sitting next to him. There was a touch of coldness on her face. She walked over and said, "Excuse me, are you sent by Mel's family?" Dean noticed the doubt and contempt in the woman's eyes. He raised his eyebrows. "Are you the branch president here?" "I'm the director." The woman frowned when she saw Duddy and didn't answer a question. Dujian's face was cold, but he was too lazy to pursue the matter. He said, "I'm here to pick up a person. It's the miner who was assigned to your place not long ago. Can you make a decision on this matter?" The tall woman immediately knew the purpose of Dudian's visit. Her expression was somewhat displeased. "All the miners have been registered as slaves. If you have the handwritten order of the nobility, I can give it to you. Otherwise, you have to pay a high compensation to buy them. Even if you buy them, they are still slaves. Even if they are killed by others, they won't get compensation." Dudian took out his hunter medal and indifferently said, "Do you know this?" The tall woman was surprised and shook her head. "I haven't seen it." "Then let your branch president come over," Dudian said. The tall woman couldn't help but choke with anger. "You are a guard. If you don't have the handwritten order of the Mel family, I have no right to inform you. The branch president is very busy. Not everyone can see him. Even if you are a guard, you have no right to interfere with our Chamber of Commerce." Dudian looked at her and said, "I can only tell you that as long as I say a word, your job will end. You are not qualified to know my identity. Go and call your branch president. Otherwise, you will bear the consequences." The tall woman wanted to laugh, but when she saw Dujian's cold eyes, she couldn't laugh. She suddenly thought that since he was a guard, he shouldn't be a crazy person. She was a little scared when she heard Dudian's tone. Maybe he really had a background that she didn't know. She slightly gritted her teeth and said, "Well, you wait here. I'll help you inform the president." Then she turned and left quickly. Joseph and the other two people were a little stunned. They didn't expect Dudian's attitude to be so tough and overbearing. It was completely different from the silent and thin boy in their impression. After a moment, a middle-aged man in a black suit followed behind the tall woman. He frowned when he saw Dudian and others from far away, but he still maintained courtesy. He held back his temper and said, "Hello, I'm the branch president here. May I ask who you are?" He looked at Dudian. It seemed that as long as Dudian's answer didn't satisfy him, he would immediately let them go. Dudian naturally felt the doubt and impatience in the other person's eyes. He was too lazy to say more. He raised the hunter medal and said, "Do you know me?" The middle-aged man's eyes were sharp. He immediately saw the pattern on the medal. His pupil shrank as he looked at Dudian in horror. He quickly reacted and bowed. "Greetings, elder." Dudian saw that the middle-aged man knew him. The coldness in his eyes also disappeared. He ordered, "I want to bring a person called Barton. He is a miner who was assigned to your place not long ago. Bring him here immediately." The middle-aged man quickly said, "Yes, I'll do it." He turned back and waved to the tall woman, indicating her to deal with it immediately. The tall woman was surprised to see the middle-aged man's awe-inspiring attitude. She had only seen such an attitude from the president of the Chamber of Commerce. She couldn't help but think of Dudian's previous words. Her back was slightly erect. Fortunately, she resisted the impulse. Otherwise, she was likely to lose her job. Half an hour later, the tall woman came back with a dark and thin boy like a monkey. Her eyebrows were slightly wrinkled as she endured the unpleasant smell of the boy. She brought the boy in front of Dudian and respectfully said, "Elder, this is the person you want." Dudian's eyes had already seen Barton. What made him a little stunned was that after 3 years, Barton, who was a little lame, was like a little old man. His whole body was black and incomparably thin. From the side, Dudian could see rows of ribs. His hair was dirty, and there was no flesh on his face, which made his eye sockets deep. Barton's eyes fell on Joseph and the other two. He was stunned. Joseph and the other two recognized Barton at a glance. They immediately jumped up from their seats. "Old Barton, it's me. We can't find you." "You, how did you become so thin? Don't you have food to eat as a miner?" The three of them looked at the thin Barton. They were pleasantly surprised and distressed at the same time. Barton's throat was hoarse as he asked in confusion, "You, why are you here?" "It was Dean who brought us." Crone pointed to Dean. "Dean redeemed us." "The Dean?" Barton looked at Dean in a daze. Dudian didn't expect that in just 1 year of life as a miner, he would be tortured like this. He sighed. "I'm late. Are you okay?" Barton was sure that he didn't recognize the wrong person. His eyes were filled with tears. You still remember me." I thought, Dudian sighed. "I've been to other places for the past 3 years. Otherwise, I would have been able to redeem you in advance." The middle-aged man was more convinced of Dudian's identity as he heard Dudian's words. He respectfully said, "Elder, Barton is the youngest miner here. He has always been taken care of. However, the living conditions of miners are poor. We can't do anything about it. It's the rules of the higher-ups." "You shut up." Dudian glanced at him. The middle-aged man was startled and immediately shut his mouth. He knew what kind of monster he was facing. Even if he killed the middle-aged man, he would at most be punished. Facing such an existence, he could only keep a respectful distance from him. The tall woman was stunned. She felt that she had underestimated Dudian's identity. "Let's go." Dudian stood up. He didn't pursue the matter. Although Barton wasn't taken care of, as the middle-aged man had said, but at least the middle-aged man wasn't wrong. It was the rules of the higher-ups. Chapter 89. Dean took Joseph, Barton, and others to a nearby tavern after leaving the branch of Fulton's Chamber of Commerce. He ordered a table full of dishes so that they could have a full meal. After all, they had been busy for half a day. Moreover, it was almost time for dinner. Everyone was hungry. "Dean, we can't eat so much." Crone swallowed his saliva as he looked at the table full of dishes. Dean smiled. "If you can't finish, then throw it away. It's not worth much." "That won't do. Let's finish." They couldn't help but wolf down the food. At this time, a waitress came over. She covered her nose as she looked at Joseph and others. She said to Dean, "You ordered a total of 68 copper coins." Dean frowned. "We haven't finished eating yet. We eat first and then pay the bill," the waitress said in a cold voice. Dean was a bit unhappy, but he was too lazy to care about it. He took out a silver coin and threw it into the tray in her hand. "You don't have to keep the change. Give me 3 more portions." The waitress was surprised. She didn't expect Dean to be so generous. She didn't say anything as she went back to the kitchen to add more food. So expensive. Barton and others were embarrassed as they heard the girl's words. They didn't know whether they should swallow or not. Dean waved his hand. "It's just a small amount. You can eat as much as you want. I'm not short of money." Barton and the others were relieved to see that Dean didn't care or feel distressed. They continued to gobble up the food. "Dean, where did you get the money from?" Barton was about to ask when he saw other guests come into the tavern. He quickly lowered his head and ate the food in front of him. Dean smiled. He took them out of the tavern as they were almost done eating. They found a hillside nearby. He smelled that there was no one within 2 or 3 miles. He looked at them. "What are your plans for the future?" Barton and Joseph looked at each other. Joseph stammered, I don't know. I think I can find some odd jobs. I should be able to get some food." "Me too," Barry said. Dean looked at Barton and Crone. He saw that their expressions were the same. He nodded. "I have redeemed you, so I won't ignore you. There are 3 paths for you to choose. First, I have a house in the commercial district. I lack gardeners and servants. You could take up these positions and help me take care of the house. Of course, I won't treat you as servants. It's just a name. A house in the business district?" Barton and the others widened their eyes in astonishment. Dudian nodded. "Yes. Second, I will give each of you a sum of money. As for what you want to do in the future, I won't interfere. And the last one is to be my assistant and help me do things." "Be your assistant?" Barton and the others were immediately tempted. Dean said in a serious tone, But what I'm going to do is very dangerous. You might even lose your life. It's a bit illegal." The few of them were taken aback and looked at each other hesitantly. Barton looked up at Duddy. "I choose the third option. I'll help you with your work. But I'm afraid that I won't be able to help you." Dean looked at him and nodded. "I'm giving you such an opportunity because I value your ability. Don't worry about it. I'll help you." Joseph stuttered. "If it wasn't for you, I would have been sent to the mines. If I worked like Barton, I would have lost my life. No matter what you want me to do, I'll listen to you." Dean nodded. "I want to explain that it is very dangerous to follow me. It is a road of no return. You don't need to repay me in this way because I redeemed you. You don't owe me anything. I just want to repay you for taking care of me." Joseph was stunned. He looked at Crone and Barry. "I'm willing to follow you. Although it's illegal, but I believe that you won't be caught so easily with your intelligence. I don't want to be a poor person anymore. I want to stand at the top. I want to have a lot of money." Hearing his words, Crone and Barry, who were still hesitating, couldn't help but tremble. They raised their heads and resolutely said, "We'll join too." Dean didn't expect Joseph to have such awareness. He smiled. "Making money is just a side effect. As long as you do, well, you'll have so much money that you won't be able to spend it." As he said that, he took out 4 gold coins from his waist pouch and said, "This is our current startup capital. There will be new funds after a period of time. These 4 gold coins are for you. My request is that you find a remote place as soon as possible, the more remote the better, and then build a secret small-scale factory." Barton and the others looked at the gold coins. Their heartbeats accelerated. Crone couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you afraid that we'll run away with the gold coins?" Dean looked at him. "I trust you." Crone's eyes were red. "At present, I don't have enough money. After a while, I will have more money. I will have extra fun for you to study. As for your body, I will try to find a way to treat it." Duddy said. The 4 of them were startled. There was hope in their eyes. "Now, you'd better change your clothes first. Otherwise, with your current clothes, you will be robbed as soon as you take out the gold coins." Dean smiled. Joseph and the others looked at each other and laughed. Dean looked at the time. It was getting late. He said to the 4 of them, "If you want to contact me, then leave a code in the square in front of the orphanage. I'll come over when I have time. Remember to keep your identity confidential." "We know." Crone laughed. Dean looked at Barton. "I'll find a way to restore your slave status as soon as possible. Don't worry." "I'm not worried." There was a smile on Barton's face. Dean smiled as he bid farewell to the others. Dean hired a carriage and returned to the residential area after leaving the hillside. The return trip took more than an hour. The sky was getting dark. The curfew time would be coming soon. Jura and her husband were busy preparing dinner when Dean returned home. Both of them asked about Dean's whereabouts during the day. Dean casually said that he was strolling around. They didn't think much about it. After all, in their opinion, Dean was about to reach the age of marriage. Moreover, he was a guard. Naturally, he should have some personal space. Dean got up on time the next morning. He went out after breakfast. Chapter 90. On the left side of Wall Street, in front of an ordinary alley, a delicate-looking boy passed by with a piece of black Ganoderma bread in his hand. Suddenly, the bread in his hand fell to the ground. He was shocked and hurriedly bent down to pick it up, but the bread was covered in dust. He didn't know whether to pick it up or not, so he squatted in front of the bread, hesitating. The pedestrians on the street were rushing to work, so they just glanced at him and didn't pay much attention. The boy lowered his head and seemed to be distressed about the bread, but no one saw his nose sniffing slightly. The boy was Dean. At the moment, his attention was focused on the smell. He gently inhaled so that the smell would rush to the olfactory cells at the top of his nose. There were all kinds of smells on the street, but tracking the smell was like a physical instinct. He didn't need to learn to master it. Dean focused his senses on the smell emitted from the hidden chamber in the alley. Through the various smells, a vague outline of the chamber emerged in his mind. Smell of sulfur, smell of yellow phosphorus. Someone? 3 people? One of the smells has a light fragrance. It should be a girl. Dean was surprised. He didn't expect that there would be people in the secret chamber. Did the alchemy apprentices do experiments here every day? Dean slightly thought and shifted his sense of smell to the house on the street above the secret chamber. He immediately smelled the faint smell of old dust. No one lived in it, and it seemed to have been empty for a long time. There's an alchemy chamber under this empty house. The owner of the empty house is either dead or the owner of the alchemy chamber. Dean secretly thought. He picked up the bread, patted the dust on it, and went straight down the street. Although through the smell, he didn't find anyone in the high position of the buildings on both sides of the street. There should be no special sentries. Nevertheless, to be cautious, he had to put on a show. He left the street and came to the adjacent street. He found a small tailor shop and immediately went inside. A tailor apprentice boy greeted Dean politely. "Guest, what do you need?" Dean glanced at the clothes hanging in the shop, but didn't find the style he needed. He immediately said, "Help me make a black robe and an ordinary mask." Mask. The tailor apprentice looked at him in doubt, but didn't say anything. "When do you want it? When can it be done?" Dean asked. "I can do it tonight." "All right. I'll pick it up tomorrow at this time." "No problem. What kind of material do you need?" "We have linen fiber, satin, strong, ordinary fabric." Dean asked, "How much is the deposit?" The tailor's apprentice thought for a moment and said, "If you want it to be strong, thick linen fiber is the best. That's 7 copper coins in total. The deposit is half, so I'll take 3. Dean immediately took out 3 copper coins and gave it to him. "The robe should be a little bigger." "All right." The tailor apprentice smiled and took out a ruler to measure Dean's body proportions. He wrote a note to Dean, "Come and get it tomorrow." Dean put away the note and left the tailor's shop. He murmured, "Next is the tattoo problem." If he wanted to sneak into the stronghold, he had to prove that he was an alchemist. The most credible way to prove it was to show his alchemy tattoo. However, this arrow was far from mastering the laser. Once the tattoo was on the body, it was difficult to wash away. Every time he came back from outside the giant wall, his body would be checked to prevent bringing the virus into the giant wall. It was impossible to hide the tattoo. He pondered for a moment and finally decided to take the risk and try. There was an ink raw material factory in the eastern suburbs. Like most factories, it was located in a remote area close to the radiation zone. Dean came here. He showed his guard's medal and said, "I'm here to do business. By the way, I'm here to check your production environment." The 2 guards were stunned. They looked at him repeatedly to confirm that they were not mistaken. One of them winked at the other and said to Dean, "Wait a minute. I'll help you inform them." Dean nodded and stood at the door to wait. After a moment, the previous guard trotted out with a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man didn't expect to see such a young guard. He looked like a mature child, but he immediately put on a smile and politely said, "Hello, why didn't you tell us in advance that you are here to check? Aren't we under the management of Mr. Crow?" Dean waved his hand. "I just came to have a look. The main purpose is to do business with you. Do you have gallnut ink here?" The middle-aged man was relieved when he heard Dean's words. He was puzzled. Gallnut ink? The amount is very small. It has been discontinued. Now everyone uses carbon ink. "That's good." Dean nodded and said, "Give me a bottle of gallnut ink." The middle-aged man choked. He looked up and down at Dean. "Just 1 bottle?" Dean coughed. He was embarrassed. After all, this was a factory and not a shop. However, it was difficult to sell gallnut ink in a shop, so he could only come here. "How much is it?" Dean directly asked the price. He didn't give the middle-aged man the opportunity to refuse. The middle-aged man was speechless, but he still maintained a polite attitude. "Why are you talking about money? I'm giving it to you." Dean didn't hesitate. "I'm short on time. I want it now." "No problem." The middle-aged man glanced at him and said, "Is that all you want? Is there anything else?" Dean smiled. "It's just on the way." The middle-aged man was relieved. He knew that it was a false alarm. "Okay, I'll let someone get it for you." Then he turned and left. After a moment, a thin young man brought a bottle of black ink to Dean. Dean didn't need to open the cap to smell the ink inside. It was gallnut ink. This ink was used in the early days of the wall. Later, people learned to use coal to make carbon ink. Because of the high cost of the ink, the number of people who bought it was getting smaller and smaller. Dean left with the ink. He went to the store to pick up a bottle of men's perfume. He brought it back home and locked it in his small room. The smell of gallnut ink was much lighter than carbon ink. Moreover, carbon ink was often used by people, so the smell was more familiar. That's why Dean took the trouble to buy gallnut ink. Unfortunately, there is no activated charcoal here. Otherwise, the smell could be completely eliminated. Dudian secretly thought. He poured some of the ink into a small bowl and then poured some of the light perfume he had selected into the bowl to neutralize the smell. He smelled the perfume and felt that the smell did not become strange. He was relieved and then took off his shirt, revealing his healthy wheat skin. Dean looked down at the magic mark on his chest. I don't know if the alchemist apprentices will recognize this magic mark. In any case, it's better to hide it. Immediately, he dipped the quill in ink and drew along the blood-red magic mark on his chest. The cold ink fell on the magic mark, smearing the blood vessels of the magic mark into a pitch-black color. Chapter 91. The next day, Dean went to the tailor's shop to get a robe and a mask. He put on the robe, and the size was just right. He put on the mask and went to the alley on Wall Street. He smelled the smell of two people. There was one less person than yesterday. Sure enough, they are here every day. Dudian entered the alley and put on the mask. He stretched out his hand and pulled up the cloth that was smeared like a wall. He saw that there were bricks inside. If an ordinary person accidentally noticed the cloth, then even if they lifted it, they would only see the wall. But Dudian knew that there was a secret room inside, so he could see the gaps between the bricks at a glance. Dean picked up a stone and tapped it twice. There was no response. Dean tapped the door twice again. At this time, Dean smelled the smell of two people coming closer, just behind the brick wall. He waited for a moment, but didn't see them make a sound. He immediately tapped it twice and controlled his throat to lower his voice. I'm your companion. I have no malice. I'm also an alchemist. I'm looking for the organization. The two people behind the bricks seemed to be thinking. After a while, there was still no response. Dean suddenly smelled a strange smell. His brows slightly wrinkled as he slowly pulled out one of the bricks. Whoosh! As soon as the brick was pulled out, something shot out from the gap. Dean was prepared and dodged in time. But when this thing fell to the ground, it sputtered out. A few drops fell on the edge of his robe. The black robe was corroded and turned white. It was actually sulfuric acid. Dean looked back at the brick and continued, I really have no malice. If you were from the Holy Church, you would have already notified the Knights of Light to come and arrest you. I'm your companion. The two people inside didn't seem to think that their sneak attack didn't work. Hearing Dean's words, they also knew that the initiative was in Dean's hands. If they reported to the Holy Church, they would soon be besieged. How can I believe you? A female voice came from inside. Dudian asked, How can you believe me? After a moment of silence, the female voice said, Please show me your alchemy tattoo. Dudian smiled. Let me go in first. It's not safe here. It's easy to attract attention if I stay for a long time. Hearing this, the two people inside seemed to think that it was reasonable. They slowly pulled out the bricks. The light inside was dim, but Dean's vision was not affected. He saw the appearance of the two people. They were wearing masks. From their stature, he could see that they were about the same age as him, a boy and a girl. The boy that he had tracked before was not here. At this moment, the girl was responsible for removing the bricks, and the boy was hiding in a darker place, holding a glass bottle in his hand, which was still half full of sulfuric acid. Come in, the girl said. Dudian nodded and jumped in. There was a staircase under the bricks, and the place where the bricks were sealed was like a ventilation window. The boy revealed a pair of vigilant eyes as he stared at Dean. Now can you show your alchemy tattoo? Dean nodded and lifted his robe to reveal the black cross tattoo on his chest. Can you see it? The girl looked closer and said, It is indeed one of our people. Come with me. Hearing this, the boy was relieved. He called out to Dudian and followed behind the girl. Dean followed them down the stairs to a secret room. He saw that the secret room was extremely spacious. There were many shelves with various mineral powders and metal powders. There were no animal remains, eyeballs, or other biological parts. As he expected, they were from the Philosopher's Stone faction. Their goal was to refine this magical stone. "Please come here." The girl came to a table and said. Duddy and went over. "I want to see your tattoo again." The girl said. Obviously, the dim light in the corridor made her unable to see it clearly. Dean nodded and revealed the black cross on his chest. The girl and the boy came closer and carefully looked at it. They confirmed that it was a black alchemy tattoo. She suddenly came close to Dean's chest and gently sniffed. The warm breath exhaled from her nose made Dean's chest slightly throb. Perfume smell. The girl was puzzled. She smelled the robe on Dean's arm and could not help but look up at Dean. "You are a boy. How can you wear perfume?" Dean coughed and said, "I'm used to it." The girl looked at him strangely, but didn't say anything. She said, "How did you find us? We should be hidden very well. Even if you are an alchemist, you won't be able to recognize the code." She looked at him strangely, but she didn't say anything. Dean told the truth. "I saw a man in the market with a crooked tattoo on his wrist. I followed him and found him." The girl and the boy looked at each other and couldn't help but say angrily, "That stupid mouse. I told him long ago that tattooing on such an obvious part of the wrist is simply courting death. I don't know how his teacher taught him back then." At the moment, the boy who was accompanying his parents for a walk on a street suddenly sneezed twice. Dean sincerely said, "Can I join you? We could do research together." The girl looked at him. "Don't you have your own circle? Didn't your teacher teach you that our circle rarely accepts strange companions?" "My teacher is dead." Dean looked sad. "Several of my research companions have disbanded." The girl was stunned. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." Dean slightly shook his head. "It's all in the past." The girl thought for a moment. "Well, if you are alone, then you can join us. But you're absolutely not allowed to bring in outsiders. You should know that the more people there are, the easier it is to be exposed." Dean was surprised. "I will absolutely keep it confidential." "Well," the girl nodded and smiled. "My name is Nightingale, and he is Viper. Mouse went shopping with his parents today, so he didn't come. If you want to join us, you have to come up with a code name." Dean could not help but wonder, isn't the code name given to us when we join the Dark Church? Yes, that is the official code name. It is also the symbol of our alchemist identity. Nightingale nodded, "But we also have to have a code name to address each other. We can't use our real names. What if someone is arrested and the others are exposed? Did you use your real name in the previous circle?" Dean replied, "No, I used one of the characters in everyone's name. That is also a code name." Nightingale said, "We use an animal as a substitute. Think about it." Dean thought for a moment. "Let's call you Hound." "Hound?" Nightingale nodded. "Okay, I will call you Hound." Duddy nodded and looked around. "Don't you have a teacher?" Nightingale shook her head. "My teacher won't come to our place. He is busy with his own experiments." The boy called Snake smiled at Dean. "Nightingale is our teacher. She is about to reach the meteorite badge. She will be the youngest one-star alchemist. Isn't she amazing?" Dean was surprised to see the girl. From the moment he came in, he felt that the girl had the right to speak. Sure enough, she was the leader of this small circle. He said, "That's amazing. I haven't been in contact for long. I have to learn a lot from you." Nightingale's voice was a bit shy. "It's not as exaggerated as he said. There are too many smart people. I'm not the youngest. Anyway, I think you are very powerful," Snake said with a smile. Dean looked at him. He thought that this person's character didn't have the slightest relationship with Snake. This code name was a bit of a split personality. "Well, it's time to get busy with the experiment. Do you still want to get the meteorite badge?" Nightingale waved. Viper giggled and went to the next room, closing the door behind him. Chapter 92. Dean looked at some of the bottles and jars on the table. The bottles and jars were labeled, but there were no words on the javelins. Instead, there were strange symbols drawn on them. Some were the sun, some were overlapping with a five-pointed star, some were hooks, and so on. "What's this?" Dean asked. Nightingale saw the bottles and jars he was pointing at, Don't you know this symbol? Dean thought for a moment and shook his head. I don't know. Haven't you memorized the basic alchemy symbols yet? Nightingale was stunned. It was the first time that Dean heard the words alchemy symbols. Fortunately, he was wearing a mask so that the other party wouldn't be aware of his expression. He thought, alchemy symbols? The role of symbols is usually used to mark something. Oh, I know. It should be something similar to mathematical symbols. There was no record of this in Roseyard's alchemy notes. Dean guessed that most of it was too elementary, so there was no point in recording it. He immediately said, Yes, I haven't memorized it yet. My things were left with my teacher. My teacher is dead, and my things were seized by the Holy Church. Do you have a compendium of alchemy symbols? Can I borrow it? Nightingale looked at him suspiciously. But after hearing Dean call the Holy Church damn, she dispelled the doubts in her heart. She pointed to a shelf next to her. There was a thick book with a black cover. There. Take it yourself. But remember not to break it. I only have one. Dean quickly nodded. Thank you, thank you. Dean picked up the Alchemy Symbols Encyclopedia. He was about to open it when he heard Nightingale say, Go to another place, such as a small warehouse. I'm going to do the experiment. Dean came to the small warehouse that she was referring to. It was slightly messy inside. There were tools for cleaning the alchemy room and some broken filters. Dean didn't care. He casually sat down and began to read the Alchemy Symbols Encyclopedia. He saw rows of dazzling alchemy symbols. Below the symbols was a text explanation. Dean soon saw the sun symbol that he had seen before. It represented gold in the alchemist's eyes. No wonder there is golden powder in the bottle, and the amount is very small. Dean murmured and continued to read. Time passed unknowingly. Dean was completely immersed in memorizing the symbols carefully. Through the beginning of the explanation, Dean knew that the alchemy symbols originated from astrological symbols used by diviners. With the decline of diviners, astrological symbols were gradually evolved into alchemy symbols by the rising alchemy warlocks. It formed an independent alchemy symbol system. After an alchemist completed an experiment, the content recorded was usually a large pile of alchemy symbols. If one wasn't an alchemist, they wouldn't be able to understand it at all. Therefore, memorizing the Alchemy Symbol Encyclopedia was one of the basic requirements for an alchemist. He heard Nightingale's voice from outside the warehouse. Hound, it's getting dark. We're going to go home. Do you want to stay here all night? Do you want to stay here overnight? Dean didn't expect the time to pass so fast. He immediately closed the book and opened the door. He saw Nightingale and Snake standing at the door. He said, All right. Nightingale nodded. Snake glanced at the book in Dudien's hand and laughed. I didn't believe it when Nightingale told me about it. I didn't expect you to not memorize this book. Gee, you're simply an apprentice. Well, I should call you an apprentice. Ha! Dean heard his joke, smiled, and said, My memory is poor, so I memorize it slowly. I think you love to be lazy. Viper said in an I understand you tone. Back then, I had a headache trying to memorize this. I thought of all kinds of excuses to escape. In the end, it was my teacher who personally forced me to memorize it. Nightingale, on the other hand, is very smart. I heard that she only spent about a week to memorize it. How could I, who had memorized it for half a year, endure it? Nightingale smiled and said, It's not as exaggerated as you say. I couldn't even memorize it in a week. It took me half a month to completely memorize it. That's very powerful, Snake said in a sad tone. Dean put the book back in place. Will you come tomorrow? Of course, Snake said without thinking. Nightingale shook her head. I will see the situation. If there is something, I won't come. If there is nothing, I will come. Dean nodded. I will also come tomorrow. All right, it's getting late. Let's go back. Nightingale looked at Dean and Snake. Who will go first? I will go first. Viper didn't hesitate as he waved to Dean. He came to the corridor outside the secret wall and climbed out. We will go out in a few minutes, Nightingale said. Dean nodded. He knew that she was worried about going out too much at once. It would be easy to attract attention. Moreover, if they left one after the other, they would have time to organize their masks. After a moment, Dean was the second to leave. He climbed into the alley. He saw that no one was paying attention to him. He put away his mask, but still wore the mask on his face. It was not unusual to wear a mask on the street. Most people would think that it was a disease. No one would be willing to get too close to it. Dean was about to go home when he smelled a familiar smell. He couldn't help but be startled. His eyes flashed. He turned to the other side of the street with his head down. Not long after Dean left, a little boy appeared in the alley. He frowned as he looked at the direction of Dean's departure. He said to himself, "He is wearing a mask. He is really careful." He took a deep look at Dean's direction and turned to leave in another direction. Dean appeared at the corner of the street shortly after he left. He looked at the back of the boy and slightly frowned. He didn't expect that Snake would come out ahead of time. He didn't leave, but hid next to him. It should be that he wanted to see his true face. It seems that I can't take it lightly in the future, Dean secretly thought. At the same time, he firmly remembered the other's face. It could be regarded as a fatal weakness of the other. Dean looked at the entrance of the alley. He estimated that Nightingale would come out at the moment. He thought about it and gave up the opportunity to peek at her true face. After all, she didn't do this to him. If people don't offend me, then I won't offend them. Chapter 93. The next day, Dean came back to the secret alchemy room. Viper and the mouse that he had been tracking were also there. The mouse boy should have heard about Dean from Viper. He nervously asked, "How knew you followed me? So, you have seen my appearance?" Dean nodded. "I have seen it. I will keep it a secret." Rat's face was full of dejection as he said, "I've been exposed again." Viper snappily said, "Who told you to carve the tattoo on your wrist? I think sooner or later you will be purified by the light. Don't betray us." "I won't betray you." Mouse frowned. "My family has engaged me. I want to quit alchemy. Anyway, it's difficult to achieve anything with my level. At most I can get a meteorite badge." Viper shrugged. "Remember to peel off the tattoo if you want to quit." "I'm afraid of pain. That's why I'm hesitating." Mouse said helplessly. Dean was speechless. He looked at Nightingale's alchemy room and asked, "Won't she come today?" "She hasn't come at this time. I guess she won't come." Viper casually said. Dean said, "Can I borrow her alchemy symbol book?" "This is up to you, but it's best not to touch her other alchemy materials." Dean nodded. He picked up Nightingale's alchemy symbol book and continued to memorize it. Although he had the super chip which stored the modern chemical system, which was much more advanced and perfect than the alchemy system of this era, but it didn't mean that it was backward. There were still many advantages to learn from the alchemy system. After all, this was the prototype of chemistry. Dean reviewed the alchemy symbol book that he had memorized yesterday, and then continued to memorize the alchemy symbol book. Another day passed by. At dusk, he left the alchemy room with Viper, Rat, and others. This time, Viper was the first to leave. Rat was the last to leave. They were responsible for filling the passage. They didn't feel at ease leaving this task to a newcomer. When Dean came outside, he once again saw Viper hiding next to him, trying to peep at him. He ignored it and walked a few laps in the direction he came from yesterday. On the third day, Dean continued to come to the alchemy room. Nightingale was also there. He borrowed the alchemy books and continued to memorize them. He was able to understand the experiments of Nightingale and others before he left the room. From the symbols engraved on the alchemy table, Dean could roughly guess what kind of experiment they were going to do. He quickly glanced at Nightingale's alchemy table. He saw a sun symbol, 2 water drop symbols, and a spoon symbol. He was surprised. Nightingale's ambition was quite big. She even wanted to directly study gold. Did she want to directly create the Philosopher's Stone? The fourth day, Dean came to the alchemy nest, as usual. Snake wasn't here today. Nightingale and Mouse were busy with their own things. Occasionally, Mouse would come out to ask Nightingale some questions. Nightingale's alchemy level was the highest. "Don't you want to read today?" Nightingale asked in a strange tone as she saw that Dean didn't borrow books from her. Dean shook his head. "No need. No need." Nightingale was surprised. "What do you mean? Have you memorized it?" "Yes." Dean nodded slightly. "I want to start learning how to do experiments." Nightingale understood and laughed. It seems that you have memorized a lot of alchemy symbols. How can you do experiments without memorizing alchemy symbols? If you want to do experiments, then you have to buy the materials yourself. Today I can lend you some on the premise that I have extra, but you have to return them to me tomorrow. Thank you. Dean was grateful in his heart. He looked up and glanced at the raw materials on the shelves. He saw several raw materials for making black gunpowder. These raw materials were also commonly used in other alchemy experiments. Black gunpowder was the first invention of his motherland in the old era. It had a great impact on the world. It originated from alchemy. In fact, alchemy was equivalent to alchemy in the East. It was more advanced than the West. I want this yellow phosphorus. Nightingale glanced at it and nodded. Okay, I happen to have more of this. Dean asked for some resin, red scale, and other raw materials. Then he cleaned up the small warehouse. At this time, he suddenly found a problem. There was no alchemy table. He was dumbfounded. This was not making black gunpowder. He already had a complete formula. He just needed to mix the raw materials together. He wanted to study the match, but he hadn't mastered the specific production method. The last time he looked at the black gunpowder formula in the chip, he saw some materials with similar characteristics, such as yellow phosphorus, red scale, and other materials. So he wanted to take this opportunity to study it himself. Match was not a technology, but in this era, it could greatly optimize the ignition tool. It was like the difference between an electric lamp and a candle. The reason why he wanted to study this was because he hadn't mastered the power of electricity, so he couldn't read the other high-tech modern products in the chip. Secondly, the industrial level of this world was too backward. It was futile to have the idea without the tools. The second reason was the last time he detonated the black gunpowder. He felt that ignition was a problem. The fire sickle was too inconvenient. He needed to repeatedly hit it with fire steel to create sparks to ignite the tinder. It was too fatal at the critical moment of the battle. Dean looked for Nightingale and curiously asked, "Where did you get the alchemy table?" No one dared to sell this thing in the market. Nightingale was mixing raw materials. When she saw Dean looking for her, she froze for a moment and said, "I forgot to tell you about this. You go and find Mouse and see if he has time. If he has time, he will take you to the underground market to buy one. But the price is a bit expensive. You'd better prepare more money, at least 2 silver coins." Underground market? Dean was startled. He suddenly remembered that Roseyard's notes seemed to have mentioned this place. It was the underground market of the Dark Church. They had strongholds in various places. Dean immediately found Mouse and told him about the matter. Mouse didn't think much about it. He promised that he would take him there in the evening. Dean said goodbye to Nightingale and left the alchemy nest. He didn't know how Barton and others were doing after 3 days. He immediately hired a carriage and went to the slums. Dean came to a dilapidated square. He quickly found the secret code left by Barton and others. There was a smile on his face. He followed the code and soon found a remote shack. It was close to the slums where the refugees gathered. Dean came to the front of the shack. He heard Barton's surprised voice from the other shack. Dean was stunned. He saw Barton and others come out of the shack. He hadn't seen them for 3 days. They were much more energetic than before. "We were afraid that the secret code would be exposed, so we rented another shack." Barton looked at Dean's expression and immediately explained. Chapter 94. Barton was relieved as he saw that Dadian didn't care about the wasted money. "We have been looking everywhere for the past few days, but haven't found anything suitable. Crone went out again today and hasn't come back yet." Dadian nodded. He was quite happy to see that all of them were here. In fact, he had given each of them a gold coin as a test. After all, the value of a gold coin was extremely high. Even ordinary poor people would not hesitate to rob and kill. However, Barton and the others didn't leave with the gold coin. It showed that they were determined to work for him. Moreover, Dadian was very satisfied with the fact that they didn't open their eyes at the sight of money. Crone has been gone for a long time today. Will he encounter any trouble? Barry looked at the time and asked in a worried tone. Barton's face slightly changed as he looked at Barry's expression. "No, He is very smart. Joseph nodded. Maybe he's found a place. Dudian looked at the surrounding environment. You can find a better place to live. You don't have to save money. I'll earn more if you don't have it. This place is very good. Barton laughed. It's much better than when I was a miner. At least we can occasionally see the sun. Moreover, the people who live here are poor, so they won't be targeted. Dudian didn't say anything as he saw this. Although Barton and the others were orphans, but the orphanage taught them some basic knowledge, especially how to protect themselves and not be hated by others. Although they were physically disabled, but their minds were extremely sharp. They were not inferior to those who were physically healthy. In fact, they were more shrewd and cautious than those who were physically healthy. Dean followed them into the shack. The area inside was very small. It didn't take long for them to chat inside. Crone came back from outside with 3 stacks of things wrapped in oiled paper. I brought back food for you. You must be starving. He was surprised when he saw Dean. Barton asked, Did you find an abandoned factory? Crone put down the things and shook his head. I didn't find a suitable one. There are a few factories to rent, but the place isn't remote enough. Moreover, the price is a bit high. Barton and the others were disappointed as they looked at Dudian with guilt. Dudian waved his hand. Don't worry about it. You eat first, and then slowly look for a place. It must be remote and hidden enough. The surrounding environment should be open. When Roland had asked him to do this, he hadn't intended to complete it so quickly. After all, the slums were vast, and it would be difficult to find a suitable place. No matter how clever Barton and the others were, they had never seen much of the world. Roland's main purpose this time was to train them. Barton and the others felt apologetic after hearing Dudian's words. After chatting with them for a while, Dean looked at the time and got up to say goodbye. He took the carriage back to the residential area and went to the alchemy nest. Nightingale didn't say anything as she saw Dudian return. She continued to be busy with her experiments. Dean looked at the gold powder on the table and asked, Are you going to make the Philosopher's Stone directly? Nightingale saw that Dudian was aware of this, so she didn't deliberately hide it. She shook her head. How is it possible? The Philosopher's Stone is our ultimate goal. Even a 5-star master alchemist can't make it. How can I research it? I just want to see the compatibility of gold. I want to see if I can mix gold with other metals to make precious metals. Alloy? Dudian was surprised. Nightingale was surprised. Alloy? That's a good name. My experiment will be called Alloy Experiment. Well, do you mind? Dudian lightly coughed. It's just a small matter. I don't mind. But are you going to use this alloy experiment to hit the meteorite badge? Well, if it's completed according to my guess, then I should be able to get it. Nightingale nodded. Dudian's heart was moved. The most famous alloy in the old era was aluminum alloy. But there was no gold in aluminum alloy. Moreover, gold was too rare. In addition to gold jewelry, other metal elements would be added to it. There were very few gold synthetic materials. It was far less widely used than aluminum alloy. Moreover, aluminum alloy was used in many heavy industrial products. But to make aluminum alloy, we need to electrolyze the metal. We need to have electricity first. Dudian felt helpless. This was the limitation of tools. Nightingale looked at Dudian. What is the direction of your experiment? Is it convenient for us to communicate? Me? Dudian thought for a moment. I'm studying electricity. Electricity? Nightingale looked at him. This is a bit difficult. My teacher is still exploring it. Are you not going to start with basic physical materials? Dudian knew that she was worried that he would bite off more than he could chew. In fact, this was a common problem of most alchemists. Some beginners even wanted to directly create the ultimate alchemy treasure, like the Philosopher's Stone. It was completely whimsical. However, he was not ignorant and fearless. He was not interested in general research. What he wanted to create needed the support of electricity. So electricity was the first problem he had to solve. Moreover, the postmodern world had proved that the penetration and help of electricity was extremely deep. If there was no electricity, then the entire human society would be paralyzed. In short, the existence of electricity was the division between the ancient era and the industrial era. It had great significance. Dudian shook his head and said, that he would stick to his experiment. Nightingale saw this and no longer said anything. After all, it was not a good thing to interfere in other people's experiment. At this time, Mouse came out of the room. He saw Duddian and Nightingale. "What are you talking about?" "The problem of the experiment," Nightingale casually said. Mouse didn't ask much, but looked at Duddian. "Are you ready? I'll take you to the market. Come back early. Did you bring enough money?" "It should be enough," Duddian replied. Mouse nodded. "We will meet at 23 West Street. Do you know where it is? If not, then ask someone." "All right." Duddian nodded. Both of them left. Duddian had never heard of this place. He directly hired a carriage. Anyway, the carriage was charged according to the length of the road. He could afford to pay a few copper coins. Everything was based on efficiency. West Street was relatively remote. There were no shops on the street. There were only residential houses. So there were not many people here. The cold wind was blowing on the street. Duddian got off the carriage and covered his head with a robe. After paying the fare, he immediately put on a mask. He came to the front of the small building with the 23-foot sign. It seemed that no one had lived in the building for a long time. The lawn was full of fallen leaves, and no one was cleaning it. However, Duddian smelled 3 or 4 human scents in the small building. Suddenly, one of the scents disappeared. Duddian was startled. The smell seemed to have disappeared into thin air. It was as if the owner of the smell had suddenly left. He was puzzled, but didn't rush into the small building. Instead, he waited near the door. It didn't take long for Mouse to come over wearing a mask. He looked at Duddian. "How come you came so early?" Duddian knew that Mouse should have come over. He was a bit surprised and moved. "I made you come all the way." Mouse waved his hand. "It's a small matter. We are companions. Let's go. I'll take you in." Then he came to the front of the small building and gently knocked on the door. Duddian noticed that Mouse knocked on the door with a certain frequency. 3 heavy and 2 light, 2 slow and 3 fast. Soon after the knock, the door opened. A figure shrouded in a black robe opened the door. He was wearing a snow-white mask. He indifferently looked at both of them. "Come in." Mouse went in first, and Duddian followed. After the two came in, the tall figure indifferently said, "Please show me your tattoo." Mouse lifted his wrist and revealed the black hook tattoo. Duddian opened the clothes on his chest and revealed the black cross tattoo. At this time, he suddenly felt that Mouse's tattoo also had some advantages. It was more convenient to verify identity. If it was tattooed on a special private part of the body, although it was not easy to be exposed, but it would be troublesome to verify each other. Fortunately, after getting the meteorite badge, he could show it. The tall figure glanced at them, but didn't say anything. He turned around and led the two into the small building. He took out a bottle from his arms. It was filled with orange water. "I'll help you eliminate the smell so that the hounds don't detect you." After that, he poured the orange water into his mouth and sprayed it towards Dean and the mouse, splashing it all over the floor. Duddian suddenly smelled that the smell of himself and Mouse had faded. "Go in." The tall figure pointed inside. Chapter 95. Behind the door was a basement passage. It was dark and deep. There was a lot of faint human odor floating out. Dean was surprised. He didn't expect the underground market to be so lively. He could identify hundreds of people based on the smell. Although the special potion could cover up the smell, but it couldn't completely eradicate it. "Come with me." Mouse led the way as he was very familiar with the place. Dean followed behind him. They went down the dark stairs. The copper lamps on the wall shone on them. Their shadows were very long. There was a 4 or 5 meter long corridor under the spiral stairs. There were black-robed guards stationed at the end of the corridor. Dean and Mouse came to the door. The black-robed guards opened the door. A mysterious and novel dark underground market was presented in front of them. This was a huge underground square. It was dimly lit, and the lights on the surrounding walls lit up the place like dancing elves. There were all kinds of stalls everywhere, as well as large-scale simple shops. All kinds of novelty items were freely being sold here. Duddian was surprised, as he didn't expect the underground market to be so big. It must be known that the people who could enter the underground market were alchemists, potioneers, and other staff of the Dark Church. There were more than 100 merchants selling things in front of him. As for the customers, they were all over the square. It was estimated that there were at least 300 people gathered here. It was the first time for Dean to see so many evil people of the Dark Church at the same time. There was a strange feeling in his heart. At this time, Mouse pointed to a direction and said, "There is an alchemy table. Come with me." Dean followed behind Mouse. Although the surrounding light was dim, he could see clearly from far away. It was a simple shop built on the square. It was slightly larger than the bookstalls next to it. There were rows of alchemy tables on the left side of the shop. There were various bottles and strange things on the right side of the shop. He even saw a black claw. He didn't know what it was from. "Boss," Mouse called out to the shop owner, "let's see the alchemy table." The shop owner was tall and wore a dark red mask. He looked at Mouse and Dean. From their height and voices, he knew that they were two children. Most of them were alchemist apprentices or potioneers' apprentices. He was too lazy to say much. "Look at it yourself. Pick and pay." Mouse was obviously used to it. He pointed to an alchemy table made of birch and stone. "Hound, what do you think of this?" Dean looked at it. "Are the prices different?" "Of course." Mouse was very experienced. He said, "This is the cheapest. Only 2 silver coins. It's enough for us junior apprentices." Of course, if you have money, you can also buy a higher grade one, for example. This one costs 4 silver coins. It has a storage slot. It's more convenient, and it's a lot better in both drawing water and igniting fire. And this one costs 7 silver coins. He pointed row by row, and his finger landed on the alchemy table at the top. "That one is amazing, and it costs 2 gold coins. It has an automatic fire plug, and it can automatically clean the potash. There are also 2 refining ponds, which are essential for some complicated laboratories." Dean glanced at it. It seemed to be made of brass. The material and appearance were more imposing and stable than the previous ones. However, he only had 1 gold coin on him, so he couldn't spend all. This one, Dean pointed to the one that cost 2 silver coins. The shop owner glanced at him. It seemed that he had expected it. "Pay and report the address. If it is in the residential area, I will deliver it to you by tomorrow evening." "They will help us deliver it?" Dean was surprised. The mouse smiled and said, "Of course, we can't carry such a big guy. Moreover, it's too easy to be exposed. They have a secret transportation channel that can transport it without anyone knowing. Even if you're a noble, they can still transport it for you. Of course, you have to cooperate." Dean was shocked. Dark Church's power had penetrated so deep. At this time, Mouse suddenly grabbed Dean and pulled him to the side. "Let me pass." Dean was stunned for a moment. Following his line of sight, he saw 2 figures coming from behind. A man and a woman wearing a crow mask came to the front of the shop. On their shoulders, there were dark golden hexagonal badges. It was the meteorite badge. Official alchemist. Dean immediately knew the reason why Mouse hurriedly stepped aside. Both of them were official alchemists, especially the tall one. He was wearing a meteorite badge with 3 small suns engraved on it. He was a 3-star alchemist. From Roseyard's notes, Dean learned about the division of alchemists, from apprentice to 5-star master alchemist. Every increase in star required a lot of alchemy points. It was often necessary to submit several experimental results in order to accumulate enough alchemy points. A 3-star alchemist was basically equivalent to a holy knight in the Holy Church. This was second only to the commander of the knights. Their status was extremely high. Even a noble family, like the Mel family, had to be polite to them. "Boss, do you have a good alchemy table?" At this moment, the 3-star alchemist said to the shop owner. His voice was low and hoarse. It was obvious that he deliberately lowered his voice. The shop owner saw the meteor badge on their shoulders, and his eyes turned cold. He quickly stepped forward and said, "Yes, a new badge just came out. They were made by Master Rawl himself. His war craftsman skills guarantee that you will be satisfied. This is it." He pointed to the alchemy table at the top. The 3-star alchemist looked at the table and looked at the graceful figure next to him. "What do you think?" The woman's meteorite badge was 2 suns. She could be regarded as a big figure. She looked at the table and shook her head. It's too bad. There is no decomposition pond. There is also no thermal pond. That's true. The tall figure pondered for a moment and said, Then let's go look for it again. Forget it. The woman sighed. This market should be a monopoly. My experimental report has been submitted. I will soon receive a call from the top. Let's use this for now. The tall figure hesitated for a moment and helplessly said, Okay. The two immediately paid and bought the table from the shop owner. Dean and Mouse watched them leave and then retracted their gaze. Mouse sighed with emotion. We can't afford it, but they think it's too bad. Sure enough, we have too little contact. Alchemy is too profound. Unfortunately, they didn't talk much, otherwise, we might have been enlightened from their conversation. Dean was surprised. She said that the experimental report should be submitted to the Dark Church. Why didn't she wait for the experiment to be completed and then submit the results directly? Mouse shrugged and said, They want to get alchemy credits as soon as possible. Many alchemy warlocks are worried that their experiments will be researched by others in advance, so they submit their ideas first. If the evaluation is valuable, it will be converted into corresponding alchemy credits. Of course, there's another possibility. Some people suddenly have other experimental inspiration, but they are busy with the experiment at hand. They don't have the energy to do it, or they are too lazy to collect materials. So they will submit their own experimental report or experimental creative conjecture. If it is verified to be feasible, then they will be given alchemy points. Chapter 96. That's a good idea. Dean's eyes lit up. When it came to experimental conjectures, he believed that no one would dare to say that they were first. After all, he had seen the modern world. Airplanes, cannons, cars, and any other modern technological products could become experimental conjectures. Moreover, these conjectures could be 100% established. However, limited by the current industrial level, they couldn't be produced. Whether they could be recognized or not was a problem. It's not as simple as you think. Mouse noticed the change of expression on Dean's face. He shook his head and smiled. The submitted experimental conjectures need a complete derivation process. It's not a simple concept. It also needs a relatively perfect alchemy formula. After all, if the alchemy formula is wrong, then the conjecture is naturally just an empty idea, just like our illusory fantasies. Although with the improvement of alchemy, the magical things in the heart may become a reality one day, but at present there is no actual theory to support it. After all, it is just an unrealistic fantasy. Duddy nodded. He naturally knew this point. His father often said that the scientific truth needed a rigorous attitude and a whimsical heart. Experimental conjectures were based on the premise of experiments. They were not pure fantasies. Even the magical things in the old science fiction were based on certain scientific theories. They were not fantasies. However, after all, novels were just stories. They were mainly based on fantasy. They could not be regarded as experimental conjectures because the creator had not really carried out relevant experiments. It could be seen that it was not easy to submit a rigorous and qualified experimental conjecture. Nevertheless, Dean was still very excited. It was difficult for others, but for him, it was very simple. As long as he copied the contents of the super chip, he would be able to do it. After all, it was a genuine technology formula. However, the premise of all this was the problem of electricity. Dean's heart became more and more anxious. At this time, it was not early. Mouse took Dean to look at other stalls. He didn't find anything helpful for his experiment, so he left the dark underground market with Dean. It was getting dark outside. Gray clouds of radiation shrouded the sky, blocking the moonlight. It was almost curfew time. Dean and Mouse parted ways and went home. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. After the alchemy table was transported to the alchemy nest, Dean began to study the production of yellow phosphorus matches. After 3 consecutive days of experiments, he had gained a lot and mastered the initial manufacturing method. In fact, making matches wasn't difficult. Just like black gunpowder, the formula was very simple. But in the early days, The birth of black gunpowder was entirely obtained from the accidental explosion of an alchemist's furnace. Before that, no one expected that the few materials would explode together. The birth of many great inventions often came from coincidence. 3 days later, it was time for Dean to report to the hunter headquarters. Jura and her husband were still living in the residential district. They didn't follow Dudian to the commercial district. They were not in a hurry. After all, they had been rooted here for many years. They had many acquaintances from their father's generation. They needed to spend some time to get to know them. Dean took the consortium's carriage to a remote suburb of the commercial district. The place was surrounded by mountains. There were several silent castles. The carriage stopped in front of one of the castles. Dean got off the carriage and looked at the castle and the gloomy environment in front of him. He didn't expect the hunter headquarters to be such a place. The atmosphere was so gloomy. It was a good match for the hunters who often lived outside the giant wall. "Please." The coachman jumped off the carriage and respectfully said to Dean. Dean followed him. The two came to a castle on the hillside. The door of the castle was gently opened, and a young man in a black suit came out. He looked at Dean with a smile and said, "Are you the newcomer Dean who came to report?" "Yes. Come with me." The young man in the black suit turned and entered the castle. After Dean entered, the door slowly closed. Along the gravel path, they came to the front hall of the castle. It was dim inside. There was an oil painting of a woman hanging on the wall. It was the same woman that Dean had seen on the top floor of the scavenger headquarters. Dean was slightly surprised and curious, but he didn't ask much. "Your identity has been registered for you. From the moment you come today, you have to fulfill your duties as a hunter of the Melon Consortium. The highest goal is to safeguard the interests of the consortium. Do you understand?" The young man in the black suit said to Dean. "Yes." Dean glanced at his shoulders. He didn't see any hunter's medal. He asked, "You are?" The young man in the black suit noticed Dean's eyes. He smiled and said, "I'm the deputy instructor of the trainee hunters. By the way, although you have magic marks, but you are still a trainee hunter. Compared to other excellent trainee hunters, you are not as strong as them. So from today on, you will receive consortium's training." "Consortium's training?" Dean was puzzled. "Isn't it the hunter school?" The young man in the black suit smiled. "I have heard about you. Originally, the consortium was going to arrange for you to go to the hunter school for training. But you have magic marks, so your physical fitness is higher than the others. Moreover, the hunter school is a unified training. It is impossible to give you a double standard. The consortium doesn't have enough power to make them give you face. So now you can go to the hunter school. You can only receive the consortium's training, but you don't have to worry. The consortium's training content is basically the same as the hunter school. Moreover, you should have thought about your future career. You only need to carry out the special training. Of course, you still have to understand the specialties of other positions, so that in the future when we go out hunting, we can have a better tacit understanding." Dean saw that there was nothing to say. Since the top had decided, he could only do it. "What is your career?" "Hunter. Long-range output. The consortium is currently lacking hunters. However, there are not many people with archery talent. I hope you have a good talent in this area. Otherwise, it will be difficult to go to the peak based on interest," the young man in the black suit said. Dean thought of his previous shooting results. He couldn't help but feel nervous. "Let's test your talent in all aspects." The young man in the black suit smiled and said, "Come with me to the training ground." He pushed open the door to the inner hall of the front hall. Behind it was a very open space. There were a variety of training props, such as archery targets, wooden figurines, rocking wooden horses, and a cage full of sharp swords. Dean was a little sweaty. "Since you have chosen to be a hunter, let's test your archery talent first." The young man in the black suit stood in front of the target and waved to Dean, motioning him to come over. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.